Good evening, my local drones, as I, Bio Gundam, and I am back again for another video. So today, me and my buddy, Nretsew the Perv, or as he's known on
Hey,
Twitter, Nretsew the Uncensored, the
yes,
Twitter walker, the unchained predator.
yes.
We are back again for another. We are back here for another video. So today's topic, today's topic is very special because we've done what very few AniTubers have ever done before. We've actually read a book.
We actually read book. We did actual read. This is book club, book club day, book club day with Nretsew and Bio. Yeah.
Yes, our citations will be down below. Now we were gonna have like full artists here as well, but due to real like RL shit, he couldn't be with us.
Had some shit go down, but that's
But
shit
don't
happens.
worry,
Shit happens.
Yeah, stuff happens. But maybe hopefully next time we'll have him back here because I know that a lot of people have been requesting him. They're like, "Where's Full? Where's the old guy?
Where's Full?" Yeah. And of course I should also probably add, I'm also one of the hosts of Critical Critique, doing that live show every week. Clip actually came out recently. I don't know if you watched the most recent clip where I lay into explanation in his nonsense.
What did he do this time?
Oh, he was talking about problematic media, and he was somewhat lying about High Dive. Maybe not fully lying, but he was somewhat lying about it. I got a bit.
I haven't seen it. I think the last clip show showed was like the magical girl supercut.
Yeah, you'll have to look that one up. It was quite good. But yeah. But
before we continue, we will have citations down below just so Joe from Pause the Sleep doesn't kill us because
well, the main citation is going to be the Moe Manifesto itself because that's
we will be linking pages and the citations down description. So Joe from Pause the Sleep, we do have our citations.
So this has been a long time coming. I started reading the Moe Manifesto a number of months ago because it takes me fucking so long to fucking read anything.
I mean, you only learned how to read last year, so you're doing.
I'm a baby. Yeah. But no, I slowly chipped away at it. Usually after I was done drawing, I'd like try and knock out a chapter or two. And it's a very interesting book, and I think it's
very eye-opening actually. Like when I first read it, I was sorry. Let me just start.
No, I'll let you go.
I was reading it. Now I will preface is that I don't agree with everything in this book or some of the stuff that people say, but I would say this book was very enlightening and definitely gave me a few interesting perspective of things because as people know, I'm not exactly what you call an academic. I may have intellectual hobbies, but when it comes to this academia stuff, it makes my skin crawl. So anyway, I'll go back to my point.
Yeah, sorry, I'll let you finish. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, sorry to waffle, but I did find this book very, despite that, I found this book very interesting and enlightening, and it definitely gave me some interesting perspectives on things. Yeah, so your turn. I'm finished.
So on one of the casts, I think it was one that I did with Ellie, which was about Mari. I think it was the gender swap thing. We were watching somebody about that. We kind of had a little discussion. We had a little discussion about the Moe Manifesto, and one of the things to really keep in mind about it is it's one of those things where it's a product of its time, right? And it's a bit of a meme.
Yeah, this is the era of cool Japan and shit.
This was very I think it was what was the date? It was 2012-ish. This came out.
Yeah, this is late 2000s, early 2010. So this is anime. It's a bit of a different It's slightly a different landscape compared to what it was portrayed.
Yeah, and that's something you have to keep in mind when reading it, because even though a lot of what there's a lot of parts in the book that I do feel apply to today. It was a very different anime landscape back then, and both in terms of the Japanese side and the English side of the fan bases, right? So
yeah, because I think this book book came out before Sword Art Online and the Isekai boom and all that shit.
Yeah, I think it did too. So it's kind of one of those things where while I wouldn't because as you mentioned, you don't agree with some of the stuff in it, right? I wouldn't necessarily say that people should use it as a Bible, right? It shouldn't be you got to. I mean, I encourage people to read it more because
it's
of
the holy grail
you
of
were talking about.
Text.
Yeah, because of what you were talking about with the perspective thing. Because I think that's the more interesting thing about it. It gives people. It gave me a lot of perspective, which is we'll talk about as we go through the chapters. But it's not that kind of thing, right? Where it's everything needs to be taken as gospel. This is the truth. This is what At the end of the day, it's just a series of interviews with both creatives and academics and people that are, well researched on the topic or are directly involved in the topic, right? And their perspectives on it. And whether or not you agree or disagree with those perspectives is going to come down to you. But I think that being exposed to those perspectives and taking them in and going, right, how can I apply these to my own, enjoyment of this media, right?
Yeah, like,
How
and,
can
and, and I think it's very
Yeah.
eye-opening. Sorry to cut you off, but I think it's a very eye-opening text, especially if you're one of those people who don't like anime. Like, even if you don't like anime, it kind of gives you an insight of like, why do people like anime? Because
Or if you're an ironic weeb and you and you say you like anime but don't.
Or you go down the Julius Evola metaphysics of anime route as well, like that type of shit. But even if you dislike anime, reading this can kind of give you an insight of like, why do people like anime and shit like this. And I think we'll go into this when we go into the first chapter.
Yeah. So the first chapter is falling in love with Japanese characters, which is kind of the intro to the book, where the author, I think it's Patrick Galbrin. You're gonna have to say all the names because I'm terrible at names. But Patrick
Galbraith.
Yeah, Galbraith. Yeah, Patrick basically, because I have it open in front of me here. So Patrick basically just goes through sort of his personal sort of history with the media and talks about kind of his journey to sort of getting into this as an academic field and going to Japan and studying it and doing interviews with and one of the parts that I highlighted was on page 7, which is the quote: "Moe is a response to fictional characters, and when we talk about Moe, we are necessarily also talking about how people interact with fictional characters." And the reason I highlighted that part specifically early on was because a through line that you tend to pick up on, even through all of these different perspectives and interviews, is this insistence of anime and Moe being a separate feeling to reality, right?
Yeah.
Moe is specifically talking about the fictional, right? And for the purposes of context here, right, when we're talking about Moe, right, like Moe as a thing, the book tends to describe it as less of a physical thing and more of a feeling, right?
It's more like a metaphysical thing if you think about it. Like,
yeah, metaphysical is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, it's more of a, you look at the anime girl, right, and you get a feeling within you. Right, it's something that's quite hard to really describe without a word, and that's, I believe, where Moe sort of came from. So when we talk about Moe, like as we talk about the book, that's something I kind of want listeners to kind of keep in mind. Is Moe can also apply to this is me kind of extrapolating my own thing from this, right? Moe doesn't necessarily have to just describe safe for work feelings. I think that there's an NSFW feeling. I don't know if I would call it Moe, but I do think that when you look at a fictional character and have an attraction to it, you have a Moe-like response, right?
Well, it's not exactly like
sexual
it doesn't
manner
have to be. It doesn't have to be like sexual or anything like that, or erotic.
No, that's what I mean. Like, there's I think there's two, right? What I'm saying is, I think that there is Moe in the book. Okay, what I'm trying to say by it is Moe in the book is describing both, from what I can tell when I'm reading it. That's what I get. But I'm separating the two, right, for the purposes of discussion.
Understood.
I think that there is a Moe response, which is purely a oh, that's so cute, kawaii, I love this character, so and so. But there's also a response which is, I want to put my dick in it. right, you get what I mean, right? Like, you see a hot gotcha character and you're like, damn, I just want to fucking
you want to tap that ass. I mean, I've got a great example.
Tap that ass. Yeah.
I've got a great personal example. Like, one of my favorite, like, I'm gonna use like Sailor Moon's example, right? It's like, every dude who watches Sailor Moon, they have like one of the Sailor Scouts they got a crush on, or like one of the Sailor Scouts they like. Now the one that I actually kind of like the most is like Sailor Saturn, and not like an erotic. I'm just gonna preface it, not an erotic or sexual way. Like, dude, she's like what, but more like she's kind of like a cute little sister, or like it's like if only she's a couple of years older, she'd be like my ideal fucking that type of shit.
Well, you see, and that's why I'm creating that separation here, right? Because I think that that's a separation that, while might seem inconsequential, and it isn't for the purposes of the book, right? Because the book is obviously just about Moe as a general feeling.
I'm going to take a different example. Like, say for example, I watch say a few shows like like Resort Boy or Swing Out Sisters. It's like I'm just like, if I met these chicks in real life, I'd fucking clam slam them to the cows.
Yeah. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to put that in there, but to kind of loop back to the actual quote, right? Like, it's a fictional response to character. Yeah, it's a response to fictional characters, and when we talk about Moe, we are necessarily also talking about how people interact or fictional characters. I want kind of the viewership, right, the people listening right now, to just kind of keep that quote in mind in the back of your head as we keep reading, because it's going to come up a lot, right? You're going to get this feeling that, okay, so it just gets hammered in, right? So as we continue, right, so it's mostly the rest of this chapter is, as we said, it's Patrick kind of talking about his own history, talking about some of the insights that he's gained over the years. Some otaku describe such attachments as like marriage, I guess, waifus, right?
Yes.
Calling a favorite character my wife, and such.
Get a
And
job.
yes, he talks about Astro Boy. He's got Lost World. He's Omatsu, right? The first chapter, there's not really too.
It's not like super dense. It's more like a primer. It's just like, hey, get ready
it's
for the world ride.
I think it's a good primer. And I think he does a good job kind of establishing, because he also goes into sort of the history, right? Like the magazines like Lemon People, right? And Lolita Syndrome and Lolita Anime and all this kind of stuff, right? He sets the kind of stage for how Moe
he
sets
the stage of how how MacArthur saved hentai yet doomed humanity at the same time. Good old MacArthur, a true patriot.
Yeah, and then we go through till like 2006, right? And he's talking about how things have evolved since then. Haruhi Suzumiya comes up around page 220 or 120, I should say. Oh no, 21, 20 to 21, and then he goes also talking about Akihabara and the people running around doing stuff for the Revolutionary Moe Advocates Alliance. Right, there's a picture of these fucking chads walking the street.
Yeah, look at them go.
preaching their fucking word, boys. So what did you think of the first chapter outside of what I've already kind of summarized? Have you got any more insights?
No, I mean, I think it could have gone a bit more into the history, like a bit more into the history, but like it does a good job of like seeing the ground. Because like we should preface this that like I guess modern day anime and manga did kind of come from Astro Boy. I mean, it wasn't like there weren't comic books or cartoons before that, but like before that, it wasn't really distinctly anime, if that makes any sense. Like I think like anime and manga, it has almost like this metaphysical property on its own, which I kind of feel is like what a lot of people nowadays kind of forget or like miss. Like especially people who are
I think a good way to put it by would be like there's a clear lineage, right? When you look at stuff like like Astro Boy, like the works of Miyazaki, like those all those kind of things sort of
Captain the guy like Leiji Minamoto. I mean,
you have a lineage that you can very clear. And I think a lot of people miss this, right? It's almost like you can have a clear through line tree branch, right? You can see where all these different genres and these different artists.
As someone who has a friend who works in the Japanese entertainment industry, like I can tell you, like a lot of these authors know each other. A lot of these people
they know each other. They're all connected. Yeah,
I'm not going to say who this friend is, but he once said to me that like there was a couple of people that he was friends with, and he didn't know they were actually and he actually didn't know that they were friends with each other. So a lot of these creators are very interconnected. I wouldn't say they all know each other.
And I wouldn't say necessarily just like talking about, because you're talking about like on the personal level, right? I'm talking more about like on an inspiration. Right?
Well, I was about to get to that, but also on an inspirational level, like a lot of these people like often borrow ideas from each other. Some of them may have even worked together on different projects. The media industry, and especially when it comes to like anime, manga, and light novels, it's very like interconnected. And I think a lot of people like it's very like incestuous in terms of like ideas in a way.
Well, incestuous in a good way. The good kind of incest. The good kind of incest. I think that there's definitely like a lineageal through line that you can.
Yeah, like I like not saying that like the comics before Astro Boy or shit like that didn't inspire anime, but I don't think it was like distinctly anime until Astro Boy and shit. And maybe some people will disagree with me, and feel free, but like that's just kind of like the vibe I have.
So I guess we should transition into our first interview, which is the interview with I think it's Ito Komi. Is that how you say it?
Let's see, Ito Kimino. Yeah,
Kimino.
Yeah, Kimino.
Kimino. So our boy Ito here is a Kyoto University graduate of letters.
Kyoto.
Area of academic specialization in cultural psychology. One of the founders of men's studies in Japan. Now, one of the interesting things about this interview is we're talking a lot about gender here. The first couple of interviews focus focus. They focus quite a lot on what being an otaku and what moe means for gender, and I found that to be really fucking fascinating when you think about how the whole gender stuff has kind of gone over the years, right? We'll get into it because I have a highlight in both this one and the next.
I'll let you take. I'll let you like. Yeah, I'll let you cook.
So our boy Ito here, he mostly talks. He starts off by kind of what do you research, right? And he just talks about what he researches. But the first highlight that I have for this section was so PG, right? PG is the author for reference, right?
Yeah, Patrick
because I'm reading like because the acronyms show up.
Yeah, I will be showing screen caps of the books.
Yeah, you'll be showing screen caps, but for people that might be just listening in, right? I'm just describing it. So you have written on popular culture, and then Ito responds with, I have several books on it. And the highlight that I have here is you might not be aware of this, but before the Second World War, Japanese print media targeting boys was filled with images of extremely feminine masculinity. A good example of this would be the work of Takabate. Please save me.
Kishiro. No, wait, let me zoom in for a second. What was that? Okay, let's see.
Zoom on in on that.
Takabate. Okay, so Takabakakate Kasho. Yeah, Keisho. Yeah, Keisho.
Yeah.
So
you'll be better at this than I am.
Take Keisho.
Yeah, who was a popular illustrator in the.
Fuck, that's a long ass name. Jesus.
It's a very long ass name. Popular illustrator from the 1910s through to the 1930s, and you've got some examples of his. Work, kind of in the corner here. And you can see that it is very effeminate. Like you could almost describe this artwork as being femboy art, as we would describe that now, right? It's just quite interesting to me. How a lot of the historical works pre World War II kind of focused on showing masculinity in this more kind of like we would call it bishoujo now, right? But it's this more kind of effeminate sort of. So that was a very, very interesting observation that I gleaned from that. So he then goes on to kind of talk about what was Japan like in the 70s. Talking about the political left and the rise of all of certain ideologies, capitalism taking hold, cute culture like Hello Kitty showing up on the scene, that kind of stuff. And we go, I understand what you were reading, shoujo manga too. Shoujo manga provided an outlet for my anxieties about gender at the time. So it's a very interesting kind of the effects of post World War on Japan, right? World War II on Japan, and how that kind of changed the way that gender was sort of viewed over time. Like as Japan started to kind of catch up most with the rest of the world, there's this kind of interesting idea being laid out here about gender. So our boy Ito here, I was just saying that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll let you take over this part of the discussion because
my unease about gender norms at the time drew me to genres targeting female readers, and I find it to be a very interesting kind of post World War II, 1960s, 1970s Japan, kind of this sort of like, but the way that Ito kind of describes it is there's almost this kind of crisis of like, what is a man, right? Like,
I can actually tie into this because like Leiji Minamoto, the guy who wrote Captain Harlock, in a way was a reaction to the stuff, like trying to reclaim some level of like masculinity because because after like post-war Japan, like the Japanese really had this like identity crisis and shit like that because almost because you think about it, they've been occupied by a foreign nation. Their emperor just said like, oh, by the way, I'm not a god, by the way, because up until that point they still believed the emperor was divine, right? Like they've had their entire worldview,
capitalism takes hold.
They've had their whole like worldview, like whole world basically swept on into them, and I think like I think Leiji Minamoto even said that in an interview, like Captain Harlock is kind of harking back to an old style school of like Japanese masculinity,
which is interesting. Yeah, which is interesting because as mentioned in the previous pages on 25 and 26, you see these kind of artworks, right? That Ito's kind of talking about how in the 1910s to the 1930s, before World War II, a lot of Japanese art was this kind of like, I describe it as like bishoujo, right? In that kind of like the men are like they're masculine men, but they're not masculine in the same way way that we would think. Like when we think about like masculine men in the West, we think of like Kratos, right? Like,
or Guts from Berserk.
Or Guts from Berserk. Well, I'm using like a Western example, right?
Dante from Devil May Cry would be another example.
Dante maybe, right? Dante maybe, right? But they're a lot more masculine than these kind of images being portrayed to boys, right? As it even says, that's the name of the works, right? They're beautiful boy works.
Yeah,
right?
because I think the Japanese have this interesting idea of like, what's that? That masculinity is more like an internal thing. Like it doesn't matter what you look like. It's like it's the fighting spirit that counts. You can be this kind of like effeminate.
Yeah, so it's
dude,
interesting.
But,
it's interesting that you say like Captain Harlock is a return to that kind to a past form of masculinity. Makes me wonder if that type of masculinity is because when a Westerner hears that. Because when a Westerner hears that, they think, oh, Japan's trying to go back to the Western conception of masculine. It's like, no, they're going back to the Japanese conception of masculinity, which was actually way more effeminate, right, than what the Western conception of masculinity is. So I find that to be quite interesting.
Well, that's what I read in some like interview he did. Like, don't quote me. I'll try and find it. But like, if you look at like Captain Harlock, right? I mean, yeah, he's not exactly like big burly dude, but like in terms of like his spirit and personality, he's almost like unwavering. Like he's like a man of iron, steel.
And he is kind of a pretty boy too. The way that he's drawn, the way that he's designed.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he's quite rugged looking. Like, yeah, he does look a bit.
Oh yeah, he's rugged, but he's not like he's still handsome.
He's not Kratos. He's not like his arms are as thick as oak trees, and he's like chewing tobacco. They'll make him a sexual tyrannosaurus.
So one of the other quotes I didn't
get the Predator quote. Boo.
Well, one of the other quotes that I highlighted here, well, I didn't highlight it, but I'm highlighting now, is this one where PG asks him, so can you clarify what your definition of moe? And he says, moe is a feeling for two-dimensional entities. One doesn't have to risk getting hurt in a relationship with fictional character, and can also control the character. Otaku are not good at navigating relationships with real women, but they can manage fictional women, which I think is an interesting quote. And again, ties back into that very first highlight, right? That very first highlight, hammering in that point. Moe is about fictional women. It's not about real life, right? These two things are completely separate.
I mean, if they have trouble dealing with women like back in the day, imagine what it's like nowadays. Like, holy shit.
So that kind of ends like the first interview. So second interview.
I'll do the name for a second. It's Kotani Mari. Yeah, Kotani Mari.
Or I'll just say KM or Mari, right?
Yeah, I'll go Kotani Mari.
Is born in 1958 as a Japanese sci-fi critic and one of the founders of the Japanese Association of Feminist Science Fiction.
Oh,
which is interesting. Well, which is interesting because in reading the chapter, right, you hear the word. I know the reaction. You hear the word feminist, you go, "Oh no, here we go." Right? You go, "Oh no." But I felt like this was a very interesting section due to one of her observations that she makes later on. And I even highlighted a section here in this interview. KM recalls her own experiences in the early Japanese sci-fi fan community and suggests that men labeled otaku are similar to women because they are marginalized by society, right? Very fascinating perspective, right? Very interesting.
If only Fool was here.
I wish Fool was here. He'd love it. He'd love this. Yeah, it's an interesting. We might have to do maybe a part 2 where we get Phil on and we'll go through it because I think that this is a very interesting perspective. The idea of otaku,
or maybe I'll maybe I'll just like have him talk about shit and just add it as like a director's cut, like at the end.
Yeah, maybe. We'll figure it out. We'll just keep going.
We'll see how it goes.
But this idea of otaku being marginalized by society, which is true, right?
Which is true to a certain extent because you look if Fool was here,
more so historically than now, I would say. But it's still a I would say it's still a marginalized.
Well, it's a marginalized subculture for a reason, because like the otaku in a way is a rejection to like the salaryman lifestyle and some of the trappings of that. Now,
yes, and she kind of gets into that in a second, actually. So we could probably just keep kind of scrolling a little bit. But I just wanted to, mention that the idea of comparing like otaku to women now, like, can you imagine someone on Twitter is like, the struggles of the otaku are just the same as the struggles of women. They get fucking eaten alive.
Nretsew, you're assuming those people actually know how to read, let alone read a book.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's a very interesting perspective. So, a feminist perspective on otaku, right? So KM kind of a lot of these interviews sort of start off with okay, how did you get into your field? How did you what brought you so feminist and gender critiques to pop culture? And a lot of this is fine. Women tend to focus on characters and human relationships, while men focus on the robots and the special effects of the technology. You describe yourself as an otaku. What does that mean? It's not. So she kind of talks about how otaku was not widely used for a long time. And so one of the highlights I have here is, PG asks, in your writing about gender dynamics of otaku culture, you have compared otaku to women. Can you explain what you mean? And then she kind of goes to clarify, I did not mean that otaku are women, just that they are not ordinary, right? She talks about how in Japan, ordinary men adhere to the ideals of the so-called salaryman society, as you mentioned, Bio, in which men graduate from university, enter a company, get married, buy a house, have children. Next part. Send their sons to university, and expected to, take care of their wives and stuff, and then they retire. Otaku are the outsiders of the salaryman society. They do not adhere to these genders. Right? In the 1970s and 1980s, the wide range of behavior acceptable for men and women was relatively narrow. In these decades, otaku were seen as disports or troublemakers. In the article you referred to, I made the point that both women and otaku marginalized by salaryman society during this era. The situation changed, however, in the 1990s when gender norms loosened. So again, interesting idea, right? This idea of otaku kind of almost being its own gender, right? In a sense, right? Being its own kind of thing, separate from the standard, society, right?
We already have like 100 genders. What's another one to go? What's another one?
What's another one? But I think it's an interesting concept, right? This idea of otaku being outside of the traditional norms of society, right, and being marginalized.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's it is a factual statement.
Yes,
right?
It's a factual statement. Now, here's the thing. I'm just going to preface what I'm about to say. Now, I'm not a full expert on like what goes in Japan, corporations and shit like that, right? I'm not a full expert. And I have heard that a lot of the issues that show up in Japanese companies are like slowly improving. But like the stuff I've heard about like the Japanese corporations, how they conduct like business and stuff like that, it is pretty grim. Like, how they do it kind of like for a lot of people in the Saruman lifestyle. Now, I'm prefacing this with like from what I've heard. So, if there's any Japanese people in the audience who like, I can only go by what I've heard, and maybe now I do know some of this has maybe changed in certain places. But this is what I've heard, is that, like, the Japanese salaryman lifestyle is a very hard lifestyle, and it's very, like, depressing and soul-crushing for a lot of Japanese people. Especially, when marriages, and, I mean, we're not going to go to, like, the Japanese, like, collapsing birth rates like that.
So to cut it short, basically, it would be a surprise that men would want to nope the fuck out of that, right?
Yeah, from what a lot of the stuff I've heard, I mean, I can only go by, like, second or third hand information, but, like, a lot of the stuff that I've heard, if I was Japanese, I'd be like, you know what, fuck that, nope, I'm out, no.
But I guess kind of looping back to the book itself, right, I just find this idea and I think that this is an interesting perspective to talk about in the context of modern day gender politics, right, and gender identity politics, because I have a theory that this is why, for lack of a better term, transgenderist ideology has kind of infiltrated a lot of otaku spaces, right? This idea, like, a lot of otaku these days seem to be going trans or becoming trans or adopting trans-based leftist ideology. And I have to wonder if perhaps this ostracization from main society and the idea of otaku kind of being its own thing makes them more susceptible for kind of falling for that kind of thing.
It's goth shit or like the girl, like it is a subculture.
We've seen a lot of subcultures get, and I know I'm talking about it like, transgenderism is like a disease or whatever, but just to kind of preface before I get fucking cancelled, right?
Yeah, by the way, this is going on my YouTube channel, so
it's going on Bio's YouTube. Yeah. I'm gonna get you cancelled. But I'm talking not about like
Bio Gundam had this infamous.
Oh, he had this transphobe. Oh no! But I want to make it really clear. I'm talking about the ideology, not right. Transgender people, some of them are cool, some of them are right. They're good people. They're fine. They're whatever. It's the ideological component, right, and the leftist kind of component that's kind of attached itself to transgenderism and pushing these ideas around. Oh, gender is this fluid thing. You can be whatever you want, but you can actually actually only be trans, right? You know, like this illusion of choice type stuff, right? That's what I'm actually talking about here, right? I'm not talking about like, oh no, the trans people are invading the otaku spaces, right? I'm not saying it like that. I'm talking more about kind of the
Yeah, I mean, I would
ideology
disagree about
that
like the otaku being their
leads.
own like gender thing. I mean, I just view them as like a subculture. But like, I mean, this is what I was talking about one of my disagreements. But like, say for example, if you look at some of the like manga that deals with like that type of stuff, or you know, let's talk about like the trap stuff, right? Even in a lot of those like stories, like usually it's like effeminate men taking on like feminine roles in a relationship.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I just think it's an interesting kind of idea, and I think it could.
I mean, I
help
disagree
to
with the whole
explain.
like otaku being their own gender thing. Like, I view them distinctly as like a subculture, like a counterculture, as Fool would say. But you know, he ain't here, so we're gonna have to do it for him. We'll carry the torch.
I guess to kind of cap off this point, right? I think that is just an interesting idea of, you know, and it would go to kind of explain a little bit why such ideology has kind of taken root in a lot of these subcultures.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because, like, now I've never been to Akihabara or one of these places, and like, so I've never, so I don't know what the shit on the ground is like, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if, like, the otaku are a bit more accepting of, like, more quote unquote weirdos or outsiders. Like, I wouldn't be surprised because you know.
So to kind of keep going with the book here, she kind of talks about Moe represents a dynamic break in the male approach to fantasy, so on, so on, so on. So so one of the points that I highlighted the end of it, but I'll just read the whole quote for context, right? So it was, are you suggesting that idols are much the same as fictional characters, right? And she responds with, I don't really see much of a difference between idols and fictional characters. An idol exists only in the media and is distinct from real women. Like fans that worship images of idols, Moe otaku are not committing to a girl, but rather the fictional girl character. I think that Moe is the phenomenon of discreting your desires towards these media images. Producers modify images of women according to what the customers like. The feedback loop is tightened considerably, and the images are now extremely sophisticated. Moe characters respond to every specific fantasies in a way that reality cannot, and this is the point that I had highlighted, which was you could say that these images of women are independent of reality, right? So again, very, very, you know, fiction, reality, separate things.
And I think what I like about that quote as well is it talks about like the ideals reality stuff we are talking about in the previous video we did, about ecchi and stuff like that. Like this anime has this idea of like idealized reality aspect to it, and I think this is partially what she's tackling here.
Yeah, a little bit. She's kind of talking about how it might be like, you know, an idol, right? Because an idol, they're talking about like real life idols, right? Like you know, AKB.
Well, listen, right? there was always the idea of like you're in love of like the idea of something than like the actual
the idol, like the actual woman behind idol is different. Like, and obviously you have like the schizos that are, you know, they can't differentiate fiction from reality and they go after the real girl. But a lot of those idol images are more predicated on selling you this idea, right? The idea of the pure maiden, right? Which is where you get a lot of them, like, they get really mad when an idol, like, you know, gets a boyfriend and has sex or whatever, right? Because you're being sold this idea that this woman is, you know, oh, you can see some of these pictures in the actual book too, right? These idol pictures in the corner here, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's this idealized idea of
romanticized.
Romanticized is the right word. It's this romanticized idea of what, you know, a woman is, not necessarily a real life woman itself. And then she goes to talk about the focus on youthfulness when it comes to idol characters and stuff, which is mostly just, you know, pretty self-explanatory. You know, it talks about, you know, how middle school and high school are the key points in, you know, the life and whatnot. And so when they grow older and grow out of that, they want to, it's almost like return to the best times of your life type thing, right? Which makes sense. And then
especially because the Japanese have such a like romanticization about middle school and high school.
Yeah. So
unlike us and like, you know,
and then you have a whole bunch of pictures of idol images just to kind of hammer it home. And so next we've got
Osuka Eiji.
Yes. So
Osuka Eiji.
He is a critic and a manga writer and editor. Introduced. He's written many books. So basically, he's written a lot of books on the subject. and talked about a few things. So he kind of talks into this idea of, Moe is not cool, which is an interesting quote for the subtitle. So he starts off by kind of defining what he means by otaku, and his answer is kind of interesting because he's like, he doesn't really know. The word otaku was first used in the Ainko manga Bokuto back in 1983, when I was in my 30s and I was working working as the magazine's editor. It was the first time the term was publicly used. Yeah, so it kind of talks about the history of otaku, and what the word otaku actually means, right? So it's a very interesting part of the book to kind of read to get an idea of the second person pronoun, what it means. I'm just kind of skimming through to see if I can remember certain parts, because it has been a while since I've read these parts specifically.
It's fine, I'll edit some of this waffling shit out.
Yeah, you can probably edit it. But the general just is a lot of this section of the book is kind of talking about otaku history, setting up, the timeline, what it means, that kind of stuff. Here we go. So I think it was at this point. So he was asked, why do you think the media's panicked report? So this was in reference to the
the otaku killer.
The otaku murderer. Yeah, the otaku killer, yeah. And how the media kind of threw otaku under the bus, right? To talk about that. So this was because again, it's this chapter.
Here's the thing. It's the same thing of any subculture. I mean, they did that to D&D back in the 90s of satanic panic and all that shit. So.
But it makes sense for this chapter because this chapter is mostly just about the history of otaku as a word and what it means. So the crimes he committed were on girls, grotesque and shocking. And the part that I highlighted here was people feared the emergence of a monstrous youth who couldn't distinguish between fiction and reality. I wonder who that could fucking describe, right? Because we have all these kids on Twitter talking about how fiction affects reality and how fiction is, fiction and reality, there's no difference, right? It's all connected, it's all the same, right? Right. So, interesting insight here, I feel, on, because this was talking about the end of the 1980s, right? Back when those murders
this was
happened.
40 years ago, so.
You look at Twitter now, and I think that people on Twitter and whatnot have way less of a fucking ability to distinguish reality from fiction than what was assumed was going to be the outcome of the otaku murderer and the allowing that media to kind of proliferate, and that kind of thing. So very interesting. So PG then goes on to ask, you have been critical of attempts by the Japanese government to promote manga and anime as some sort of cool Japan. Imagine you can elaborate on this position. So he says, OE says, it's foolish to say that manga is art or part of high culture. It's only manga, and there is nothing wrong with it. I'm not putting manga down. I'm saying let's just accept it for what it is. Going back to your previous question about how we should define otaku, one thing we can say is that, and this is where I highlighted it, otaku are people who make their own value judgments. They know what they like and support it. If what they want doesn't exist, they will make it. And I think that's that's a powerful, right? They know what they want and they like it. And if what they want doesn't exist, they will make it. And I think that's something that we need to kind of start screaming. Something I've been pushing on Twitter a lot lately is people need to put up and shut up, right? Stop fucking whining on Twitter. Stop fucking, being a dingus. Go out there, pick up a fucking pen, start fucking writing, start fucking drawing, start fucking creating shit.
I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'm actually writing a novel. I'm starting.
We're both, right? We're both doing stuff. I'm doing art stuff in my own time. I'm doing, trying to start getting better at digital illustration. You've got your own stuff, right? So we are not hypocrites in this regard, right? We are actually, we're both complaining on the internet, but we are also actually fucking creating shit, right? And I think that that's something that needs to kind of get pushed a lot more.
I think the issue with it is it's kind of like the corporatization of things. You notice here's the thing, the difference between here's the thing, anime was still niche back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and even talking about when this book came out, right?
Yeah, I mean, anime was still a relatively niche thing. It's not like that anymore. I think that's what preface our earlier thing. This book is a product of its time. I mean, like anime blew
And
up
his
after
and,
2012.
and his opinions are obviously, like, this man's opinions are also a product of the time that they were written as well. But I do think that it's not a wrong statement. I think that corporatization of it aside, if we want to combat that if we want to fight that corporatization, right? If we want to fight that corporatization and the ideological encroachment and all these other kind of things that are leading to media being shit, right? Rather than just complaining about it and also not supporting it financially, because that's another key thing. You don't buy shit from people who hate you, right? We have to also seize the means of production, right? Have to seize the means of production and start creating shit ourselves, right? And he kind of gets into that a bit more, he says, what was the premise of Manga Batara, where people could produce the manga that they wanted to read, but no one else was producing. Animation company Gainax, rest in peace, did the same thing with anime. They produced what they as fans wanted to see. Garage Kit Maker, whatever their name is, because I can't fucking read, did that with figures, right? They aren't doing these things because they wanted to be positively evaluated by outsiders, right? This is a very important highlight, right? Very important. So make your own shit, right? But don't do it for the for the fucking clout, right? You're not making art to get popular, to make money, to, be seen as this Giga Chad. I'm just talking about this highlight here. They're doing these things because they wanted to. They aren't doing these things because they wanted to be positively evaluated by outsiders. And I'm saying that's a very key point that ties into that other highlight.
I mean, I'll use an example, like the dude who wrote Sword Art Online. Sword Art Online was a passion project. He just did it for fun, right?
I think he entered it into a contest as well.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Axel World was actually one of his actual first, professional public work. And then, Sword Art Online he did for fun. And even though we can rail on, Sword Art Online, here's the thing about the author of Sword Art Online is that he actually said that he's going to try and fix it. He's actually improving. And, he's even going back and fixing it.
Yeah.
But, use Sword Art Online as an example. It was just a passion project. He just did it for fun. And, I don't think he knew, I've seen some of his other work, like Axel World and stuff like that. They're kind of, I wouldn't say Axel World's, popular, but it's, decently received, right? But it didn't blow up as much as, Sword Art Online did. And I don't think he expected either. He was just doing it for fun. And he's holy shit.
Yeah. So that kind of, because he actually, he name drops Gainax and he name drops the books that he worked on and he name drops Garage Kit Makers. And it those two highlights, right? Those 2 points about making your own shit and not doing it because you want outsider validation, right? You're not doing it because you want to be seen as the Giga Chad who
it's the New Zealander saying of do it yourself.
Yeah, you're doing it yourself, pretty much, right? And I resonate with that quite heavily, and I think that that's a very powerful point. So, in contrast to the new breed who liked things because they were trendy or cool, otaku liked manga and anime just because they liked, no matter how uncool they appeared. The new breed wanted to be cool, but the otaku did not. The new breed found mainstream support, but the otaku did not. Otaku are as you mentioned, otaku are a subculture, which is fine, but now the government and academics claim manga as high culture, and it is praised as such in America and Europe, and he finds that utterly ridiculous. Right?
I'm gonna cut you off. I'm just gonna cut you off. Now, about anime and manga being high culture, I would agree it isn't high culture. What is high culture is, the Tale of Genji and stuff like that. That's high Japanese culture, right? Anime and manga is basically just equivalent of cartoons and comic books. And I'm not saying that cartoons and comic books can't be highbrow, right? And I'm not saying that
it's like he was saying.
And I'm not saying because it's animated it's for kids that that type of stupid argument. But I think the other thing interesting about that quote is it basically tackles the tourist situation as well, the anime tourist shit. I mean, Nretsew, you have a lot of experience with these types of people, so why don't you go ahead?
Well, it kind of gets into this, because he's talking about it from the perspective of the government pushing it as high art culture, cool Japan type stuff. But he also he brings up the new breed, and what he means by new breed, he kind of defines that earlier in the chapter. We didn't really kind of read it, but he new breed is basically the posers, right? They're the people that are getting into the thing because it's cool, not because it's a genuine sort of passion, I guess, for it. Whereas otaku are, as he describes it in that quote, right? It's the otaku who are in it because they liked it, right? They're in it because they actually have a passion what the media is and what the medium is, and that is a very important thing. And so it's not. It's as he mentioned. It's not about putting it down, right? It's not about saying, oh, it's
just don't call it something
shit.
it isn't.
Yeah, it's don't call it something it's not, and don't it's almost like being humble, right? It's almost like don't be a fucking smart ass. Oh, my anime is so. Oh, my farts! They smell so good. I'm such an elitist.
I don't want to Nretsew, you deal with a lot of these tourist types and stuff like that. Give us a bit I've seen a little bit of it, but you have more experience with this type of field. Just give me an idea of the type of shit you deal with, just anecdotal.
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff now, it's changed a lot because it's become very irony poisoned now, where you have people that either don't or they do generally enjoy anime, but they do they're kind of doing the bad version of what this guy's doing, because this guy's not being ironic, right? He's not saying, oh, anime is trash and so am I, and it's so bad. No, he's just saying, look, treat it as the kind of entertainment that it is, right? If you're a fan of it, you're a fan of it. Be proud of the fact that you're a fan of it and go out and make more of it, right? That's what he's saying. But online, you have a lot of these tourists or these, ironic people, right? Who will only, they will say that they like it. They will say that they're a fan of it. But then when push comes to shove, not only will they not put up or shut up and actually contribute to the culture, but they will then also insult, right? They will insult and they will attack and they will denigrate the culture and say, oh, it's so sexist and racist and bad, and
or try and change it into something it's not supposed to be.
Yeah, they'll try and change it into something completely different, right? And that's kind of part of the problem. So there's a bit of a duality here, right? Which is why I found this part really interesting and why I did so many highlights on it, because I thought, all of these quotes are very fascinating and kind of tie into that whole tourist. So as he continue, so they continue, and the final part of the section from this interview, which I think was fucking great, was the last one where he says, "How do you define moe?"
Oh,
so
here we go.
This is the definition that OE gives for it. So moe is something you feel when looking at a character. It existed in the novels of the Meiji period, 1868 to 1912, which was at a time
modernization.
Yeah, modernization. To regard moe as something postmodern. So another interview that's coming up on page 170 is mistaken, right? So the idea of moe, yeah, which I kind of agree with, because I think that we have the word moe, but like I described when I sort of separated the sexual from the non-sexual versions of moe, right? I think that because moe is a feeling, we've probably been feeling that feeling as humans for as long as we've had fucking, consciousness, right? And we just haven't had the right term or terminology to be able to describe that until moe came on, right? So describing it as postmodern is like OE says here, incorrect. Because it's always been there, right? We've always had that capacity, right? It's not something that's just appeared out of thin air. Those who do so simply want to present their feelings towards fictional characters as unique and special, and popular academic media encourage this. Here's a highlight that I did. So we have a situation now where educated anime fans are styling themselves as cultural theorists, and then you have American and Europeans responding to all of this, thinking that Japan possesses something special in its moe culture. This Orientalist fantasy feeds right into the nationalistic desires of the government officials in Japan, who seek to appeal to the world for recognition as cool. First of all, moe is not cool, and neither is otaku culture. These so-called phenomenon are taken out of context and blown out of proportion. Fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of correct, because, listen, there's a difference between, cute anime girl and, say, Vincent Valentine from FF7, right?
I just think that the because he's not wrong, right? Because we're viewing, the Japanese culture and, anime culture and moe culture through a secondary lens, because we...
Yes, by the way, I'm just going to tell you, all people here, listen, if you think Japan is just like they are in the animes, you're in for a very rude awakening, Paul. It's not like that.
Well, it's not just that, though, right? It's about
okay,
portraying...
I'll let me finish my point. A lot of the stuff that happens in anime, especially the more realistic ones, are kind of based in some kernel of truth, but a lot of them are overly dramatized. So
Well, it's
Japan
like
isn't
this.
the land of like milk and honey. Just accept. If you think it's
Well,
gonna be like that, you're in for a rude awakening.
Well, it's like OE kind of says here, right? He's talking about the Orientalist fantasy, right? That feeds into the nationalistic desires
Yeah,
of the government
the
officials,
Japanese
right?
are like fey, like mystical elves from Tolkien. You're just too mystical to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. But I think it's a very, I think it's a, because it does sound like he's insulting it by saying it's not cool or whatever. But he's really not, right? It's a very interesting way to do it, because he's not being ironic about it, right? He's being
No,
like,
he's
no,
being very
look,
genuine. He's just like,
yeah,
listen,
yeah.
like, yeah, anime and manga is part of the Japanese culture, but it's not like high culture. I mean, and that's not saying you can't have, say, highbrow show like
And I
anime
like
or
how
manga.
I like how he's directly calling out people that are like smarty pantsers, right? We're in these educated anime fans styling themselves as cultural
Gee
theorists.
golly, I wonder who that's a reference
God, I
to.
wonder how many fucking anti-tubers that applies to, right? these fucking anti-tubers that see themselves as these cultural theorists and these fucking highbrow, academics and stuff when they're really just a
As they
bunch of
drink
fucking
like Jack
idiots.
Daniels, it's, oh yes, the
So
thematic themes of Madoka
So to kind of
Magica.
cap this off, it seems strange to me to fixate only on Moe and to ignore the best-selling manga such as Vagabond, 20th Century Boys, and One Piece, or even my own multiple personality Detective Psycho, none of which feature cute characters or relationships. I think it's true to say that the majority of mainstream manga and anime have nothing at all to do with Moe. And then the last highlight, which is the end of the quote, is instead of looking at things rationally, everyone is buying into a fantasy created by the media, intellectuals, and government officials. Which I think, again, food for thought, right? Food for thought.
I know not many people are going to watch this video, but because 5 hours too long, can't watch. But
yeah, it's
please,
going to be a long one, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. We are cooking. If only Fool was here.
Yeah, we are cooking here, right? And I mean, I would recommend reading the whole book for yourself, because we're obviously not going to read the whole book. We're just kind of going through certain points that I kind of highlighted as being, interesting, right? And so I would highly recommend people seek out the book themselves and read it, because it is very, these insights, might give you a better perspective on your own enjoyment of the media and why you like it, and instead of buying into these, fantasies created by the media and these intellectuals, I would have put pseudo intellectuals there instead of intellectuals, right? I know what he means, right? But I would have these pseudo intellectual dumb fucks.
There's a problem with that. I mean, me and you both have been on Non Otaku's pseudo intellectual podcast, so it's just
yeah. Okay, so moving on. We've got
Saito Toshihito Hiko. Yeah.
Yes, and he is the founder and president of animation production studio Reed. He was involved in the planning of Magical Princess Milky Momo, which
Lolly's
is
favorite character, by the way.
Lolly's favorite character. So
shit, we should have had Lolly here. Fuck.
Yeah, we should.
Or unknown. Okay, maybe next time.
Maybe next time we'll have some more people. But so this guy, so now we're kind of getting into a section of the book which talks about magical girls and male fans of magical girls. And a lot of this section kind of just talks about the history of it, talking about how they didn't really set out to make the series aimed at men, but it just kind of ended up attracting a male audience, and him kind of talking about how,
going back to like Sailor Moon, I mean, most of the girls in that show are like fairly attractive, or like at least personality wise, people like the type or at least like personality wise. Some of them are like the type of personality that I kind of attracted to.
I mean, he talks about how Milky Momo helps people who lost their dreams, very positive messaging, so on, so on, so on, so, and kind of goes into it, and so it's an interesting section, and we can kind of gloss over it a little bit because
because I'm not exactly expert on magical. Like, listen, I've only seen like Sailor Moon and a few other magical girls.
It's like I said, we're not going to read the whole bloody book, right?
I know.
There's a lot of book to get through.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of. This is a thick tome, but like
we're gonna be kind of skimming a little bit from here on out.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say, like, how I got into like Sailor Moon is that my stepdad gave me like a sales pitch of like, oh yeah, they have like skimpy transformations and chicks get raped in it. Like, and 15-year-old me was like, wow, this is the most coolest thing ever. I'm gonna watch this.
Yeah, so that section is very interesting for the history of it. I didn't highlight particularly much inside it.
Yeah, we're not exactly magical. Like, I don't mind magical girl stuff, but I'm not exactly like what do you call like a magical girl expert.
I think it it is relevant for talking about Moe and the history and all that stuff. So moving on to our next interview. So we've got
Oh fuck, this is okay. Fuck, this is a name. Okay,
Yuji, Yuji, our boy Yuji.
We're just gonna call him Yuji.
Who is the representative director of anime production company Parrot, right? So big name Parrot. If you know about them, you'll very, very, very. And this is kind of the part 2 to the part 1 on the magical girl side of things, right? So you had president of production Reed, and now you've got Studio Parrot, and it kind of keeps going onto the topic of magical girls, and how did they plan this particular show? Showing kindness as a strength. One of the parts I highlighted here was to what extent did Bandai shape the show? Because they're talking about the way the show kind of came about was Namco Bandai had these toys. They wanted to sell the toys to kids, so they came up with the idea for a show where the kids use the toy, well, where the main characters use the toys, and the toys do a thing, and it's just, story as old as time, right? So because the budgets were so tight in producing TV anime in Japan, you needed to have a sponsor, and the sponsor needs to sell toys that were related to the anime. So you need to have a theme that children can be drawn into. Transformation is a theme that children are interested in. For boys, it's the transforming machine. For girls, it's the transforming human. The need for transformation is probably an unwritten rule for TV anime targeting children of Japan, which is very interesting. Because obviously that's sort of still true, right?
Yes.
Because when I think about like shonens, right? What's one of the key, like, because even though it's not robots anymore, right? There is a lot of transformation.
It's the idea of like transformation, of becoming something more.
Yeah, well, not just from that perspective, but also from like the power-up perspective, right?
Yes.
Like the main shonen protagonist, like Naruto has like 5 different fucking forms, right? Over time
Deku
they change.
has like 100 forms depending on how much percentage of all for one or whatever the fuck he's using.
It's like different. He has like the 8 quirks or whatever, right? So there's this the idea of transformation.
It's like 10 quirks apparently.
So while like for the era that he's talking about, right, it was more about, hey, we have a toy, we have to sell the toy. Transformation, henshin, right? But now it's
Kamen Rider.
Kamen Rider. Yeah. Now it's more. Now it's more. You can kind of have like there's more forms of transformation than just human and machine, right? And those lines have become a bit blurred over time, and you're having like shonen characters doing transforms and stuff,
or turning into demons or shit like that. All sorts of fun shit.
So Namco decided to sell the wands. Yeah. So it kind of talks a bit more. So this is a very interesting interview from sort of the anime production side of things, talking about how the production came about, what was the target audiences, how did they go through that kind of stuff. Got some highlighted sections here. How was it that you were able to produce such high drama? And they kind of talk about, there's an interesting quote here. There was American animation is much sharper and smoother, but Japanese animation focuses on creating good drama. Japanese anime has a reputation for being interesting for adults, which stems from the commitment to the story and the drama. Making anime in Japan is closer to writing stories for adults. And I found that to be very fascinating, considering the absolute fucking state of Western entertainment right now, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, this might date the video, but things aren't looking so great in Hollywood. I mean, there's a lot of people who are talking about this, Critical Drinker and etc., right? But
yeah, and I think that there's an interesting.
Quote, by the way, shout out to the Critical Drinker.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good boy.
But he's
a good boy. So, this idea of the commitment to story and drama, right? And I would argue that that's one of the reasons I got into anime more so than a lot of Western stuff, because it did kind of focus on that sort of it would be hard to describe it at the time.
I mean, one of the first anime I properly got into before I officially got into anime, before I knew what anime was Fullmetal Alchemist 2003, and that that shit blew my mind. It war, conspiracy theories,
drama. It's the drama. Right, it's the drama.
I was like,
the story.
Holy shit!
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is, I think that a lot of Western media has kind of forgotten that focus on drama and story, and it's about representation and fucking all that woke shit, right? But I think that's the problem, is instead of making good drama and good stories, right? They're
a lot of good stories rely on drama, right? Look at the Game of Thrones novels. The reason why they're so popular isn't just because of like the sex and
So
violence, but because of like the drama between like the characters and politics.
So close to the end of this section, there's a few more highlights here. Why did Harriet stop making Magical Girl series? It was simply due to the declining number of children in Japan. The number of children is shrinking, which means the number of toy companies is shrinking. And finally, there are fewer Robot and Magical Girl series for children. There is only one major series for little girls at any time now. That's enough, right? What does the anime industry look like today? There are more series being made and they target diverse viewers, but at the same time, it is harder to create a long-lasting series. It is hard to find a sponsor willing to invest in a series that will run for a year unless it is based on a proven manga series. Instead, animation series tend to be short, about 12 episodes, and orientated towards selling DVDs and Blu-rays rather than toys. The toy makers don't want to invest a lot of money in producing toys for a series that might not be a hit, so they wait and see if a short series will be a hit before making the toys. But by then the new series will have appeared and no one will be interested in the old ones. In Japan, we've always had a sort of domestic demand for anime, so we haven't necessarily had to look overseas. Now that dynamic is changing. We need to reach out to overseas markets, which is why there is so much anxiety about fans streaming anime online free. It wouldn't matter if licensing and DVD and Blu-ray sales weren't so important, but now those are precious sources of income, right? So that's an interesting look into the production side of things circa when this came out, and I have to wonder, I think it is still relevant, right? I would argue it is very much still relevant to how things are today, but I do wonder how streaming services, like legal streaming services, have kind of changed this perspective, right? It'd be very interesting to kind of look into. And my last sort of highlight for this section was Miyazaki, one of the most celebrated directors of anime films in Japan, shifted in the 1980s from male protagonist to female protagonist, and I think he did that because it allowed for a different approach to the world, which is an interesting kind of tidbit there. But yeah, looping back though, I think that the talk about the absolute state of the anime industry today and where, like circa when it came out, I think it's very interesting.
I mean, here's the thing, like, anime is, like, slowly going down here. Now, I do have it on good, like, from what I've been told, there's kind of a bit of a battle between, like, various creators and, like, the corporate higher-ups for, like, I'm not gonna say, like, woke shit, but there's definitely, like, internally, there's a bit of a battle going on between, now, it's not just, like, creators versus, like, the corporate higher-ups, it's kind of, like, from what I've been told, and this information's been outdated, but there's a bit of a battle between various, factions in the media industry for, like, you know, I'm not gonna say like woke shit because it's like it's other stuff as well, but there's a bit of a fight going on in the industry.
It's just creative freedom in general, I guess.
Yeah, you know,
but
like,
this is talking more about DVD sales and Blu-rays being important and stuff, which was back in the time, but now streaming services, I have to wonder. It's interesting though.
Yeah.
So moving on. So next interview we got one with Pop.
Yeah,
Pop
a name that isn't actually hard to say for yeah.
A self-proclaimed 17-year-old illustrator who popularized the word moe with his debut work. So this is kind of talking to the artist. And I found this interview to be quite nice. It's a little bit more about kind of, their journey as an artist and how they started to draw professionally, how they went to Akihabara and got kind of inspired by a lot of the stuff in Akihabara.
Yeah, it's good wholesome art bro stuff.
It's good wholesome art bro stuff, yeah. One of the things here that I highlighted was, are you attempting to change your style to reach a wider audience? And Pop says, well, I'm known for drawing cute girl characters, and that's what I want to be recognized for. If I can't be accepted for the work that I do, or need to change it to be accepted, that's too bad. Basically, get the fuck out. Basically, get the fuck out.
Sorry to cut you off, but just to time to that point, if you haven't heard about the recent controversy of the latest Dragon Age game, I hate this fucking idea of chasing the wide audience because, like, listen, now here's the thing, I'm a big fan of fucking Dragon Age, right? Like, I'll admit it, I love fucking Dragon Age. Veilguard, I'm like, no, you lost what made Dragon Age good and fun.
It's pretty bad, yeah. So, but yeah, no, I think that's a good attitude to have. More artists need to have that attitude. More artists need to basically go, I'm making the art that I want to make. Fuck off. If you don't like it.
Well, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. Like,
Another highlight I had was for you personally, mate, what makes something moe? And Pop said, whether or not someone has put love into it. If someone has put their heart and soul into a drawing, then it's moe. A drawing that has powerful emotion behind it has much more impact than one that merely employs technical skill, right? So all you artists out there, fucking doesn't matter how shit you are, fucking get out there, fucking start drawing something. Fucking let's go. Let's get going. Let's get going. Go on. Do it. Fucking let's go. Right? There you go. So when viewers respond to your drawings, yeah, so again, it's a good chapter. It's a good chapter. It's very wholesome.
Good solid chapter.
So next we've got
Momoe
yes.
Heiko.
So she is a singer and voice actress.
She was also kind of cute.
She is very cute. One of the parts I highlighted here was how she considers moe fans a misunderstood subculture of men struggling with and against gender. See, it's coming back around by her, right?
Yeah, it's coming back around.
It's coming back around. The gender stuff comes back, right? So she kind of talks about her history. You know, she does a lot of singing, you know, working on a lot of shoujo games, debuting as a voice actress. She does a bit of illustration and stuff as well, I believe. Like, she's a bit multi-talented.
Yeah, she's a jack of all trades.
You have been very outspoken about what it means to feel moe for characters. Can you elaborate? And I have a few highlights in this section. Where it's like, you can't define moe as guys that are in love with fictional girl characters. You could define moe as guys that are in love with fictional girl characters, but it's more complicated than that. For example, men who feel moe for characters might cross-dress or decorate their bags with cute keychains or wear cat ears to events. The Toho Project, a series of games which are very popular with men, feature cute girl characters wearing ornate costumes. The focus on fashion and style strikes me as very feminine, sort of like shoujo manga for girls. Lots of men cosplay as the cute girl characters from these series. More than a desire to date a cute girl or anime character, it is a desire to become her. I'm friends with the professional fighter, name I'm not going to even try, who is a famous otaku, and he's certainly that way. He cosplays as cute girl characters, not because he wants to cross-dress, but because he wants to be that character. When I was working on Nretsew Kazumi, I met with the character designer, Watame Akayo, terrible names. He also did the characters for the anime series Bakemonogatari, 2009. His girl characters are really cute, right? He uses bright colors and designs incredible costumes. I asked him how he drew such cute pictures, and he told me it's because I become Kuromi-chan. He doesn't approach the characters objectively, but rather from the inside out. It's probably similar to when I become a character and perform for her voice, or when the other guy, as a fan, becomes the characters that he loves. Moe can't simply be described as guys feeling romantic emotional characters. So, interesting perspective. Rather than just talking about, that moe feeling being just a romantic thing or a sexual thing, right? Could also be a desire to want to become like that character, right? And a lot of, the gender ideological people would say, trans! Oh, it's about trans! Oh, they're trans! It's like, no. Right?
I mean, okay, I would say maybe for some people, yeah, but like most of the time,
well, maybe
like,
for some
no.
people, yeah, but no, but I don't think that's the majority.
No.
I think there's something else going on here, and that's why I know you don't necessarily agree with the whole otaku gender thing, right? But I'm kind of coming around to it, right? I'm coming around to the side.
Yeah, the feminists have converted you. The Japanese have.
The feminists have converted me. I've been corrupted by the feminists, but I'm coming around to the idea because it does make a lot of sense, right? Like it's not just falling in love with the character. It's you admire the character to the point where you want to become them. right? And I think
It's almost like
that's
mentoring from fucking Skyrim. It's like, yeah, you become this entity.
Yeah, you become. It's like role playing in a video game almost, right? But it's a bit more complex than that, right? The feelings are a lot more complex. So I think that there is definitely. I think there's something there, right? Is what I'm saying, and I think there needs to be more research into it rather than it just being kind of the perspective of this voice actress in this book, right? I think that there could be.
I mean, here's the thing: there might be research
there.
of it, but like, my Japanese isn't that good, so I wouldn't be able to know. I mean, we'll
Yeah,
have to
that's the
ask
problem.
Joe.
That's the problem. Is like we don't have resources to see the Japanese side of it, but from the Western side of it, right? Looking at it from a Western perspective, I think that there could be some interesting insights that could glean from
I
exploring
might
this
ask. I
avenue.
might try and get in contact with Joe, see if he's.
So, well, and this is so going straight into it on page 77, right? Are you suggesting that Moe could be considered, could be thought of as becoming, being beyond gender, right? So Moe isn't bound to being male or female. The response transcends gender. Moe is a third gender, right? Right? But I like it. No, I like it. I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting concept to consider, like this idea, because, and I think it's a shame that, the gender ideological numbskulls, right, have completely destroyed any possible discussion we could have about this concept, right? Because everyone's just going to think you're a fucking crazy person like they are that goes on about their 57 fucking genders or whatever, right?
I think it's 100 now, but I lost track after 20.
It doesn't fucking matter, who cares? but this is kind of what I'm saying, is what an interesting concept to think about and kind of have as a thought experiment. Moe, feeling of Moe, the experience of Moe, the, how one interacts with these fictional characters, right?
Yeah, like I said,
being
I kind of
considered
disagree,
a third
but
gender.
like I kind of disagree, but at the same time, I can kind of understand the thought through. I just kind of disagree.
Well, why do you disagree? I'm interested. What would be your main objection to the idea?
I just kindly view like otaku as a subculture. Like, yeah, it can include like women in it, but I don't view it as like a gender thing.
No, because what they're talking about when they say, gender and sex and what, right? They're not saying like, oh, like otaku are like fucking new types, right? Like, or otaku are, a gender. It's more talking about the behavior, right?
Oh, okay.
Right,
I will.
right.
Okay, I'll skip my ejection.
No, I get where the confusion is, right? I get where the confusion is, because this is what I mean. This is what I mean about gender ideologues destroying the conversation, right? Because when you hear the word gender, you're thinking about like a fucking Tumblrite, you're thinking about like a Tumblrite fucking purple rainbow-haired fucking, frog person.
Okay, I'll save my because maybe I'm thinking of something else. So yeah, but like continue.
Yeah. So like when you think about gender, like when a lot of people hear gender now, they think about that Tumblrite, frog person or whatever that thinks they're a frog and that's a gender or whatever. No, what they're talking about here is behavior, right? Like the male and female, so I hate to use the term, but socially constructed gender roles, right? That's what they're talking about here when they say gender, and Moe being a third gender, right? They're talking about Moe as being a separate behavioral class, right? And how men and women interact with media in this deep, meaningful way could be considered a separate form of behavior, right? Which transcends the traditional notion of male and female, right? Is kind of what they're talking. So I think that's how I kind of interpreted it, right? So maybe we're both in the wrong, maybe I'm in the wrong, maybe you're in the right? But when I think about, this concept, that's kind of what I'm coming at it from. I'm coming at it from this idea of, separate behavioral functions that don't fall into traditional male and female roles. And I mean, objectively, does kind of make sense, right? Objectively, because, when you think about it, falling in love with fictional characters and stuff isn't really, conducive to masculine or feminine behavior. So,
I mean, men and women both do it, so it's like,
But if you continue the quote, though, right, she goes on to say, if you think about the characters in anime, manga, and games, you'll no doubt notice that there is a lot of androgyny, right? There are characters who are otonoko, which sounds like the Japanese word for boy, but is written in Chinese characters man and daughter. So
yeah, just for the layman, like it's basically
girl.
what we'd call traps, like that for the layman.
Yeah, it's what we call traps. Yeah, but she explains it though, so it's fine.
We're using it in a positive context, not a negative what some people think.
Yeah. They appear to be girls, but they're actually boys. It's part of a larger trend towards feminization. In anime, you have weaker male characters, for example, Amuro from Mobile Gundam and Shinji from Neo Genesis Evangelion, and stronger female characters these days. No one is interested in the male characters, but everyone likes the female ones. In the shoujo games, the male characters don't want the players don't want strong female protagonists or strong male protagonists because they might get in the way of their imaginary relationships with the female characters, right? Whose lives the games are almost certainly focused. And then here's an interesting one that I highlighted, which is why I continued reading, right? Actually, if you think about anime series such as Lucky Star and K-On! That are popular with otaku, male characters don't really appear in them at all. But then you have women reading boys love manga where there are no girls, and the female readers are identifying as the male characters. I know lots of women play Tomiki Memorial 2, which is a game about dating cute girls. So you have women becoming male characters and men becoming female characters, and that's the flexibility at the heart of Moe. So again, that's kind of what I'm getting at with the third gender, right? Is that it's transcending, like what she's talking about and how I'm interpreting it is that it's transcending the traditional style of gender, and you've got boys acting as women and women acting as boys, right? And kind of this crisscross happening, this intersection between the two, right? And it's within that you're finding this kind of third moe gen type stuff. And I think it's an interesting idea. I mean, I can kind of agree with it. I don't know if I'd fully co-sign it, right? This isn't me like, oh, Nretsew endorses wacky gender ideology bullshit, right? But I just think it's an interesting, I think it's a perspective that's worth considering and worth thinking about.
It's an interesting thought experiment, let's just say.
So then they talk about some other stuff, talking about music. Do you still consider your songs to be about moe? And then she goes to say, in a thing that I highlighted, the same way that moe is able to transcend gender, it can also transcend internationality. So talking about, you know, listening to different songs from different cultures, even though they might not understand, right, the language and whatnot. So that's an interesting point. Right, moving on to the next one.
Toromi.
Yes, and she is another singer, character designer, illustrator, such and such. Voice of Michan. So she's quite well known for doing these kind of shrine maid type works.
Her art style is more of a blend of like traditional like Japanese aesthetics and moe.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, the Buddhist deity made into a moe character, right? And this kind of talks about that process and talking about, you know, how they draw, what they draw and stuff. One of the one quotes here that I have highlighted is, "Do you have a sense of who is attracted to your drawings and music?" Well, when I'm creating, I don't usually have a particular audience in mind. I don't select my audience. I want to be selected by them. Again, instead of chasing after an audience, instead of going after a quote unquote wider audience and stuff, you know, it's more about wanting to go after, wanting to just produce your art. It's kind of like a "we will build it, they will come" type deal, right? I think that's a very, very interesting, relevant point to make. Putting yourself in the work as a woman, do you find it difficult to draw female characters that appeal to men? It's not something that she thinks about. So there's some stuff going, some interesting stuff here. One of the interesting things that she kind of gets into is this idea of moe being sort of a private thing. Because she gets asked, okay, so the love that cannot be spoken. Yeah, you can't state that you can't stare at the boy you like, but you can keep stealing glances at them. Where there was a time in my life where I said the word moe all the time, like screaming it out loud when I looked at cute characters, but that didn't feel right to me. Moe is something private, right? So there's an interesting thing we're talking about, moe being sort of this private thing, right? This thing that you kind of, keep to yourself and express via different means other than directly say. It's quite interesting. But girls do talk about the boys they like. Girls are shy. Yeah, so kind of talking about the difference. He continues to go on talking about, her work work and working for the Buddhist temples and that kind of stuff. And it's quite good stuff. So then we get on to our next interview bio.
Okay, Shimada Humikane.
Yes, who is an illustrator who I believe the series is
Strike Witches. This is another one of Lolly's favorites.
It's kind of Strike Witches type stuff. I think it's Strike Witches stuff. But yeah, basically draws these kind of mechanical girls, right? Like Sky Girls, Strike Witches,
Yeah, the blend between the mechanical and the organic.
Yeah, so he kind of talks about that here as well. What are your hobbies, so and so and so and so? What inspires you? Why did you decide to pursue this career? A lot of examples of the figurines, right, of these characters that all look really good. So mechanical girls. I'm just kind of skimming. I don't think I had any highlights for the section, but it's a good section.
Yeah, it's a good section, but I've never seen Strike Witches and never been really interested in that.
Well, it's not necessarily about seeing it, right? It's more about what are they saying in their perspective on these phenomena and stuff. Okay, next. Now we've got.
Our boy Jun Maeda. Jun Maeda.
Yeah, it's
the guy who literally got bullied off the internet.
Yeah, it's our boy. Head writer for the company Key, right? So the Crying Games, the Nikkei games, as we like to call them. Clanad, Ear, Canon, all the good stuff. So this is also a very interesting kind of section talking about, the foundation of Key, what it means, making these games, what, the different inspirations, how do you get into making adult games, talking about the adult industry a little bit within Japan. One of the interesting points that I highlighted here was, Bishoujo games offer a lot of opportunities for creators. And MJ says, because these games are not expensive to produce and there is a lot of room for experimentation, you don't have to worry so much about reaching a mainstream audience the way that commercial games do. And again, tying back into the earlier kind of quote that I just read from PG. From Tome, which was when I'm creating, I don't usually have a particular audience in mind. I don't select my audience. I want to be selected by them. So something that you kind of, as you read through the Moe Manifesto, is these quotes. They all kind of start to link into each other, right? You start to sort of put the pieces together in your head, and it kind of forms this really interesting kind of perspective on it. So instead of having a committee making budget-related decisions, so he's talking about that. I can create stories for Bishoujo games that would be impossible in commercial games because they would be seen as too niche, right? So again, highlighting the importance of being a niche, right? Highlighting the importance of
highlighting audience of not trying to trace like the wider fucking audience because you lose what made it good in the first place. And another point I want to bring up is that like a lot of people who especially went mainstream in the anime industry, like a lot of them cut their teeth on fucking Bishoujo like hentai games and shit. Like you'd be our boy Tosh, for example, or the guy who did Air Gear, or our girl Pochi.
Yeah. So going through, there's a lot of really good information in this section that I would highly recommend people read because it is very informative. So what I quite liked his answer to the question, what does Moe mean to you? It's very short and sweet. It's a reason to live. If it were to be taken away, many people would no longer be able to survive. Fucking brilliant. He's not wrong though.
No, he's not wrong. He's not. I hope he actually. I hope he returns back to the industry because, like, I don't know, like, okay, as bad as like Charlotte was, I don't think Jun Maeda is that bad of a writer. Like, I hope he comes back.
But he's not wrong though, right? Because I think Moe is definitely a big. I think Moe is an important part of the human experience, right?
Yes.
And it's something that's very right. And then the last part that I had highlighted here was a small quote that is, everyone feels like they are fighting for what they believe, right? Which was, I believe, talking about, Otaku Gather and video streaming services. It's an age where people, it's why fans are so passionate and outspoken, and that energy flow fuels the Moe boom with so many people talking about manga and anime, So, very interesting. But moving on, now we've got some very interesting.
Okay, Ito Nosy. Yeah, Nosy. I think it's Nosy. Yeah, so Ito Nosy.
Character designer for the adults game company Unionsoft. Her illustrations have appeared in games. She also illustrated Clockwork Lime, Shakugan Oshana, Haruhi Suzumiya, fame. So very recognizable style, very classic.
Yeah, this is classic classic, like early to late 2000s shit.
Yeah, very, very, very good stuff.
Hood classic.
So she kind of talks about, going, again, very much about the creative process, talking about, why she draws the way she draws, what she likes drawing, how did you come to the company, what is your focus when you create a character, these kind of questions, right? And it's all very interesting stuff. One of the things I've highlighted here was your character illustrations are widely praised by fans as moe. What does the word mean to you? And she says something that comes hard and fast at your heart. Maybe every time we think that's good, we are feeling moe. People use it loosely now, but in the beginning I think it meant you saw a character and thought, wow, cute. It's not a particularly new or special feeling. So again, looping back, talking about how it's not postmodern. It's something people have probably been feeling for a long time. Something
Well, if
that's
you think
probably
about like the
innate
evolution
to
of art,
humanity.
like maybe they just didn't have like the artistic ability to express it. If you look at the evolution of like art and styles,
Well, I think
like,
I think it's at least the artistic ability. It's the words. I think people just didn't have the word for the feeling,
Yeah.
right? Until Moe showed along. So it's what's another one here? Another one was which of your characters do you find to be the most moe? And she has a little quote here that I quite like, which is, if you stop and think about it, men just want to be part of that world. They think that it would be splendid if such girls existed. They could be close to. So talking about, watching magical girl type stuff, and being close to magical girls and all that kind of thing. So yes, very interesting section. So moving along, we've got
a name that isn't super complicated. Honda Toru.
Yes, who was a cultural critic, became famous in 2005 when he wrote, some books on the subject, talking about the philosophy of moe, went, so on and so forth. So again, there's a lot of really good perspectives in the book because you got the perspective of both artists, cultural critics, psychologists, gender studies, right?
We got a
things.
whole fucking shebang out of this fucking book.
Yeah, and that's why it's a very good book that I would recommend everyone read because, like I said, it gives you a very good variety of perspectives that you could kind of, apply to yourself. So this guy talks about his hobbies. He likes games and stuff. He talks about his, playing these games. So he mentions an interesting thing here about Neon Genesis Evangelion. Hideaki Anno betrayed all of the fans by brutally killing Asuka in the movie at the end of the series. Personally, I think that is one of the reasons why you had all these people turning on fanzines and Bishojo games in the 1990s was because fans were so upset at the ending of Evangelion that they went searching for some kind of compulsory satisfaction. Interesting play.
Interesting insights. If only
not quite
Thor was
familiar
here.
with that game, but yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, so interesting thing about in Neo Genesis Evangelion is a lot of the lore comes from like these two fucking dating sim games, by the way.
Right. So when he's asked what does moe mean to him, he says moe is the warmth and solace that cannot be found in human society. Moe characters tend to be separated from humans. Again, reality fiction separate.
Yes.
Gonna keep hammering it home. So it's another one of those quotes. So there's a section here where they talk about kind of like people having like there's this anime or there's a poster in the room and the poster becomes a real girl and stuff, and they're kind of talking about what this could mean for otaku and whatnot. And our boy here says people are lonely and project desires into the objects around them. In moe culture, anything can be the shape of a cute girl, machines, utensils, world nations. As long as it's female and human in shape, a moe character does not have to be based on a human, right? Cat girls, doggo girls, monster girls, very similar things. So he's kind of talking about that there. So there's a section here where he asks, who tends to have an interest in moe characters, and they kind of talk about the types of people that will be into them. But at the very end of that section, he has a bit that I want to read out, which was, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that everyone should give up on reality. I'm just pointing out that some of us find satisfaction in fictional characters. It's not for everyone, but maybe more people would recognize this life choice if it wasn't so belittled, right? So kind of talking about it as if it's its own thing. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a man or get the girl. Yeah, so kind of going back into talking about how society views it and why men would be attracted to these kinds of shows. Kind of goes into saying, in a world without male characters, how should the male viewer identify? It's a complicated question, And the answer is totally open for imagination. Moe fans are so busy tuning everything around them into cute girls that it is not impossible that they turn into a cute girl themselves. Again, back to what we were talking before about otaku, wanting to become the character.
Yeah, man, this book just keeps on going in circles. Like he keeps on looping back.
It does. It goes around in circles, but I think it's less that it goes around in circles and more that despite it being different people with wildly different backgrounds and wildly different perspectives, there's these through lines that kind of go through the ideology, right? I guess, and you can kind of formulate some really interesting stuff based on this. So then we've got. Would you say that Moe is about... Oh, yeah, this was an important one. So it was, would you say that Moe is about physical attraction to characters? And HT says, I don't think Moe is just about physical attraction. Again, going back to the distinction between, how I kind of defined my own separate versions of Moe, right? People who presume Moe are looking for something deeper. In shoujo games, there is one girl the player loves and wants to be with, and the story, kind of talking about that. Despite what some people might think these games are something like romance novels, it's the relationships that are involved, right? Again, from that perspective. So do you think that Moe is somehow compensating for the lack of love in the real world? And his response to that is quite interesting, but the part that I kind of pointed out was people don't imagine a relationship with an anime character because they couldn't find a girlfriend, but rather they fell in love with the character in the first place. So kind of talking about it as not necessarily being a replacement for traditional relationships, but instead being a traditional relationship that just so happens to be with a fictional character. And then what do you think the future of Moe is? Someday soon, this hierarchy of real and artificial will break down. So talking about how, two-dimensional, love interests and stuff will be kind of, the separation between the two will dissipate. So, oh man, I'm going to need to get another drink. I'm bloody thirsty. I'm going to have to wait for...
This next guy is going to be Mori Naga. Yeah, Mori Naga Takuru.
I believe he's media personality, writer, literature, and he has otaku leanings, as you can tell.
He looks like a less Chad version of the guy who wrote Negima, to be honest.
He's got a good collection of stuff there. He's published a few books on Moe economics. So this is going to be kind of talking about the economic side of things a little bit. So it's an interesting perspective from talking about like Moe in terms of how that affects like the economics of like the region.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how it kind of goes into the ideas of like the economic dating market in a way. I mean, as we all know, the dating market currently right now is really in the shitter. Imagine what it would have been like 10 years ago. Like, ugh.
So I had some highlights like right away in the very first kind of quote where they're talking about kind of like you're an economist and why are you studying otaku? And one of the very first things he says is humans, however, don't operate rationally, which is quite true.
Yes.
Because economics, as he puts out, right? They assume that people make rational decisions, but they don't. People don't make rational decisions. We make a lot of our decision making based on emotion, how we calculate those emotions, right?
Yeah.
And in his research, the research theme, because I'm going to say my highlights, he says, otaku will pay any amount for things that they value, but these things are worthless to others, right? Which is a very powerful kind of...
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's the old saying? Like, one person's trash, another person's treasure.
Because, I mean, I look at, like, those... Because, fuck, man, Mighty Ape, right? You know what Mighty Ape is.
Yeah, I know what Mighty Ape is, but for the layman...
No one's going to know what Mighty Ape is, but it's basically just a shop where you can buy a bunch of shit, right?
It's like New Zealand Amazon, basically, for the layman.
Kind of like New Zealand Amazon a little bit, but it's not. It's all... I don't know how they operate, but basically, they've got anime figures on there, and those can go up to, like...
Very pricey.
Which is very... Like, that's like the price of a fucking game console, right? you're paying the price of a game console for a hot anime figure, and it's like, the figure looks nice, but fuck, that's a lot of money.
It's the fucking exports. It'd be just cheaper to go to Japan and get it like locally.
Yeah, so this chapter kind of gets a little bit into that. He talks about the producers are otaku and they want to produce other otaku for other otaku who appreciate their work. They're preserving what they love. Which I think is an interesting quote as well, because that it kind of harkens back to some of the stuff that we were talking about before, where, you know, people need to be creating art, you know, for themselves,
Yes.
right? In a sense, right? You need to produce art, not necessarily for a wider demographic or wider audience, right? A lot of the stuff in the Moe Manifesto and a lot of these quotes seem to lean towards a philosophy of
do it yourself.
Art should serve itself, right?
Yeah.
You are an otaku. You want to create otaku works because you want more otaku works in the environment, and other otaku of your similar leaning are going flock to that like moths to a flame.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because it apes their value things. I also like how he sort of talks about like kind of like the Moe economy, and I think it was like I was reading I forget who did this. It might be further down the chapter, but it's talking about like the commercialization of love or romance or something.
Yeah,
like
I think he starts kind of talking about that here, because the question asked was, you know, written about the economics of love, and he talks about the marriage market being crazy, just as crazy as the otaku market, lasts 20 or 30 years. And now it's interesting looking at this, because this is obviously from
this is like 10
like 10 years ago, right? This is like a past tense perspective. But I don't know if anything's really changed in
I would say that things have just gone I would say compared to like what it was 10 years ago. Now maybe, you know, I wasn't like fully aware of these issues, so maybe like my perspective is a bit biased in that regard, but like I would say that things haven't really changed. It's more like they've gone worse, and people are just more open about it.
Because it says here like 49.4%, like from 2005, 49.4% of men between the ages of 30 and 34 are unmarried, right?
I know the Japanese...
And then in 2010, which is 10 years ago, the figure rose to about 50%, right? So there's definitely some interesting stuff there, and our boy here kind of gets into that. Talks about,
and as much as
they want a standard man, not normal, but standard, right? Yeah. Standard in the sense of
just to hold your point, like I know the Japanese like birth and dating market thing is kind of a bit of a meme at this point, but here's the thing: like currently now in our in the year of our Lord and Savior 2024, shit's dropping all over the goddamn place. Like even in sub-Saharan Africa of all places, like shit is dropping.
Yeah, it's not a Japanese specific thing.
I mean, if anything, like Japan's a bit of the canary in the coal mine. I was watching this video called like Rural Japan. It's about like this Australian dude, right? And he lives in Japan. He talks about some of the stuff that goes on here. Now, I'll take his word for like, but he talks about a little bit like some of the stuff that's going on in the dating market there, and this is from his perspective. So you know, take it from a grain of salt, because you know he's not omnipotent. He can only comment on what he's seen or heard. But one of the things that like, he talks about is that how like you know the salaryman lifestyle, and how a lot of people just end up in these very like passionless romances and relationships. It's very like almost like an obligation, and like they just end up like hating each other or having like these sexless marriages. And it's like it's just bad all over. And there's also like other stuff as well.
And I wonder if this is, I mean, this is getting way off topic, but I wonder if this is being to the prevalence of NTR being so popular in Japan, because it is popular in Japan. I don't have it on me. I'd have to go through I will have to maybe send you this, because I think it's Fanza. It's that Dojin website, but it's region locked. You can't actually view it if you're not in Japan. But I have a friend of mine who graciously translated the whole art and sent it to me, and then I put it in a different server where it talks about kind of like the tag ratings and what was popular over the last 10 years. Right, and it talked about how NTR, and for people that don't know, NTR is basically, to kind of simplify it, it's like cheating, right? Cheating stories, right? Yeah, cuckolding stories, cheating stories. It's complicated. There's like Nitorare, Nitorori, like there's different type flavors of NTR, but to kind of simplify it for the layman, it's like cheating stories, right? That is currently the chart topper in pretty much all categories, right? Based on not just like, you know, in general, but like you break it down to age, you break it down to gender, you break it down to it's like everyone's into NTR, right? And I wonder if the Japanese dating market / marriage situation, as you were just describing, where you have people going into these like sexless marriages, they're not happy with their marriages.
There's like different obligations, and like both partners.
They've got all these obligations. Like I'm wondering if that's leading.
Like I'm paraphrasing the video. Like I'm paraphrasing his video simply. Like I'll link them down in the description below.
You have to link it in the description. But like even with the paraphrasing, right? Like I have to wonder if that kind of thing is leading. I don't want to call it a sexual dysfunction, because it's not like a sexual dysfunction, because it's more like the development of that fetish, and the popularity of that fetish has grown due to the rise in, you know, these unhappy marriages, because people are looking for like they're having the fantasy of cheating, or having the fantasy
Well,
of being
listen,
cheated
as we
on,
both know,
right?
like, listen, there is a thrill in doing something that's bad and wrong.
Yeah, but anyway, that's getting way off the topic. Let's get back to
Yeah,
what
but
he so
yeah, but
he basically.
I just thought it
Oh
was
yeah, I'll
kind
let
of
you
interesting
finish.
that he brought that up because, like,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
we know, like otaku would be at the bottom of the dating pecking order. So you
Well,
can,
that's what he to loop right back into the text, right? Like that is basically what he's talking about, right? He's talking about they want a standard futsu man, right? Not normal, quote unquote, right? Standard. Standard is the important word there. It's like standard in the sense of middle class working man. Sort that was common in the United States for the 1950s and 60s, right? They call them salarymen, right? That kind of thing. So they he kind of talks about that being like the optimal pick, right, is to try and find a salary man to marry, right? And then he kind of talks about, how does the situation make people go crazy, and he kind of talks about, alternate lifestyles developing within a group of people without partners, right? So that kind of talks about what I'm talking about with this fetish thing a little bit, right? But he's talking about it in relation to people's becoming attracted to two-dimensional, right, stuff. But those two kind of topics, those two kind of topics kind of go hand in hand, right? Like the idea of okay, we're in this like kind of situation where people are not necessarily marrying, they're not falling in love, they're not getting, they're not doing traditional forms of dating. If they are getting into relationships and marrying, they're not happy with those marriages, they're not satisfied, right?
Yeah.
And so that's leading people to seek that kind of I don't want to say validation, that's not the right word.
Excitement.
Excitement might be the right word, yeah. They're looking for what they're missing. Right, they're looking for that kind of, I think alternative lifestyles as it's like developing within the group of people without partners. Right, I think that's kind of where I'm getting at, where people are developing these sort of alternative lifestyles, right?
Yeah,
And
if we had Full here, like he could probably comment on some of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah,
he
probably could, but Full's not here.
Yeah, but he's not here. But I do know that like
we might have another secondary discussion with him another time about it.
We might do like an addendum with like the full cut. But I just want to mention, like, I have heard that in Korea that there's like a subset of women that are like not having children, like they just refuse to have that, and I kind of wonder if this is all like I'd have to ask Full because he's more knowledgeable about Korean.
I think the Korean thing right now is more about feminism, but it's a different topic for another.
But I think it's kind of like, I know it's like feminism, but like I have a sneaky suspicion it might like have similar issues on top of that, like what's going on in Japan as well. Like I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't like similar issues.
So you have written a book on Moe economics, and then he talks about, okay, so what does Moe mean to him? Moe is the feeling of love for fictional characters when you love something that is not a human woman the way that you would love a human woman. That feeling is called Moe. I think that's a pretty, like, we've heard a number of different definitions.
I think this is the most reasonable.
Well, I don't know if reasonable is the right word. I think it's the one that makes the most sense, right?
Yeah, like it's very standard. Okay, maybe not reasonable is the word for it, but I think it's the most like standard. Like this is the most vanilla take.
I think it makes sense because a lot of when we listen to the other explanations when people are asked that same question, a lot of the time it's like, okay, it's a feeling, right? It is not something that is tangible. It's not very easy to describe it, right?
It's like a metaphysical thing. Like it's just kind of like,
yeah, it's like describe how it actually feels to be happy, right? It's almost like trying to describe a color, right? Like,
yeah, color to a blind person. Like you don't know you can't describe happiness. You just know the feeling.
But when you feel that feeling, right? You feel that Moe feeling. Right? You know what it is, and that's why I think comparing it to how one would love like a woman or a man, right? I think that's a very succinct way of putting it. So I like that. So it's good to point that out. When did you first start? Yeah, so he's talking about, when did he start looking into things? An interesting point here is, why do otaku like young characters? And there's an interesting quotation here, or a point that I highlighted, which was, what they need is a character that's even weaker than themselves, right? Which is sounds kind of dismissive. It's a little bit in the context of the rest of the quote, though, right? It kind of makes sense because he talks about how otaku seem to be weak, especially in male-female relationships, disempowered both economically and in the love market. So they're looking for kind of a way that they can feel kind of in control, right, on top, right, which can lead to
like
the character needs to be weaker than me so that I can have the power, right? I can have the control, which is a very, even outside of talking about otaku, that is actually a very common thing
Let's be honest. Like, I know it's a stereotype, but like a lot of nerds are typically like physically weak people. You know, they're not very like strong.
And it's not meant to be like a mocking, derogatory, right?
Listen,
otaku, derogatory, right? It's not meant to be like that. I think it's just stating the fact, right?
Yeah, it's just pointing out the obvious. Like, I don't think it's. Yeah, I agree. It's not supposed to be derogatory at all.
Yeah. So he keeps talking about, now that the word moe means to you. So the definition of moe economics. So this is where it starts to get kind of interesting. He talks about the moe market is right. The moe market does not lie with people I can call the fundamentalists, the term I use to describe those who are completely satisfied with two-dimensional love. These fundamentalists comprise less than 10% of the market. So that's interesting. Right. So there's a differentiation between fundamentalists, which I would describe as maybe really hardcore fucking, posters all over the wall, shrines.
Yeah, like the stereotype.
Shrines.
Yeah, the stereotype.
Yeah, shrines made to their waifu, that kind of thing. So interesting that he views it as being a minor percentage of the market in comparison to everyone else. For those who, I'm going to keep reading this one just because I think it's interesting.
Keep going.
Right?
Go.
For those who can't be satisfied only with the two-dimensional world, there is a need for the material. Moe market is concerned with providing this three-dimensional material to people looking for satisfaction in the two-dimensional world. Figures of anime characters, cosplay, maid cafes, and so on are all ways of making the two-dimensional part of the three-dimensional world. So it's talking about how, so the fundamentalist split is a fundamentalist is someone that can just enjoy the two-dimensional and doesn't need, any three-dimensional, interaction with like another human or whatever, right? Like the real hikikomoris, right?
Yeah, the hardcores.
But when he's talking about like what the actual market is serving, it's serving people that want they want the 2D, they want it to be real in a sense, right? They want, because he uses maid cafes as an example, right? Like a maid cafe is kind of taking a two-dimensional idea and putting it
it's just taking an anime stereotype, world, right? Or like it's like the maid cafe and turning it into reality.
Like the anime figurines as well, like the statues, right? It's the same kind. And then why do you think the moe market is so much more robust in Japan than the United States? Now this was an interesting kind of section too that I want to read because to our American friends in the chat, right? To our American friends in the comments, I guess. Moe is more visible in Japan because of the excess of unmarried men who turn to manga and anime video game characters, so and so. And Japan is probably the only place in the world that is producing characters that can be the target. Well, I mean that's changed now, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Also, because manga and anime are part of Japan's popular culture, people are widely exposed to two-dimensional characters and develop feelings and affection for them. That is why it is possible to formulate an alternative such as moe in Japan. But again, I think that pressures contributing to the phenomenon are shielded globally, and that, now this is the key point, moe will become a big market in other countries too, as more and more men end up on the losing side of the economy. Right?
It's very funny that he says that. So
fucking Nostradamus in the book here.
Morinaga, the prophet, man. Okay,
the great prophet, right here. Because I was just about to, because I mentioned, right, he talks about how Japan is the only place in the world producing these characters. Well, that has fundamentally changed.
Well, one of the things I want to bring up is like, let me cook because you've been talking. I mean, one of the things I want to bring up is like, the VTubers and the the parasocial agents from this. I mean, Morinaga here basically predicted that because VTubers are global. Like, the anime characters, but they're like from all over the place. We even got
it started in Japan, but now it's global.
But we got them from all over the fucking place. We got them from all over the fucking place. We even got a few from Australia and New Zealand.
I was going to bring up more Korea and China.
Yeah, you go. I've had my point. You cook.
Particularly in terms of gotcha games, right? Like you have Blue Archive, that's Korean, right? Blue Archive is Korean.
And
those guys are 100% fucking based and otaku pilled. If you watch, there's a video on YouTube, I believe it's called 7 minutes of the Blue Archive devs being based, right? And it's just 7 minutes of them got these different clips of them from their live streams games where they're talking about stuff like there's this one really good one where they're in like a conference room and they're like having a fucking intellectual discussion about a belly fold on a character and like, oh man, do we want to make it a little bit more? Are we going to make it just the right size to grab it, right? And they're having this like, they're talking about it like you would talk about it like a business meeting. It's fucking great. So that, you know, in China as well with, you know, different games like Girls Frontline and Genshin Impact and Kai, you know, the MiHoYo verse, right? That kind of stuff. All of that stuff is kind of, you know, obviously inspired by the Japanese, you know, Moe, right? There's a direct lineage from Moe to these external, you know, I say external because it's outside of Japan, right? These external sources, right? So it's, again, it's like Nostradamus here in the chat. It's like Moe will become a big market in other countries too.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. Like, he wasn't wrong. Like, within like a couple of years after this book was published, it kind of became a thing. And back to VTuber things. And if you look at VTubers, right? I mean, we've got them all over the goddamn place. We've even got a few from New Zealand and Australia, of all places.
Yeah, and I think that his direct quote of more men ending up on the losing side of the economy, I mean, just look at what's going on in China and Korea, right? Look at what's going on in China and Korea. Like, Korea has this whole feminism war going on. They're at each other's throats. Women are, as you mentioned, you know, not wanting to have sex. They're not wanting to marry. They're not wanting to do anything. Men are obviously on side of that. Where are they going to go? They're going to turn to stuff like Blue Archive. They're going to turn to these gotcha games. They're going to turn to, you know, Moe, right? Return to Moe, right?
Yeah.
China, similar situation, right? China. Well, I mean, I don't know the exact.
I think the situation is slightly different because they have.
Yeah, I don't know as much. I don't know as much about the Chinese situation, but
we'll have to ask Paul as well. But
I do know that China probably has similar issues, maybe not to an extreme extent. But
the thing with so I don't know much about China. I know a little bit, and probably Fool knows more. If only we had Fool here, add that to the counter. Like, I do know that China has a massive gender imbalance. I think it's like 1-3 or 1-2. So
yeah, but kind of wrap it into a bow, right? Like, the general point is that these issues are happening everywhere. They're getting exacerbated, right? And that's leading to the creation of these new markets, right? You have the VTuber markets and the gotcha game markets. And I
mean, eventually, at the rate we're going to have the sex bot market at some point as well.
The sex bot market's coming soon, coming in hot, right? So I think that yeah, this is such an interesting, you know, observation.
Yeah, and I think it's very prophetic too, because within 10 years, I mean, within roughly 10 years, and give it 10 years and a bit, you know, the prophecy has come true. Nori Naga, the prophet.
So to continue, he then is asked about, you know, Moe as a resistance to society, and he kind of talks about how it's not necessarily a resistance; it's more like a preference, right?
I think it's more of a preference, and like I think a rejection, which is what he says, is a rejection to like the salaryman lifestyle. Like, you know, you will work in a corporation 9 to 5. You'll have a sexless and loveless marriages, and you'll hate your life and hate your kids.
Yeah, he makes it very clear. I don't want to read the whole thing because I'm trying to save my voice, right? He makes it very clear in this section that he's not saying that, you know, people that are into Moe want to reject traditional 3D relationships, right? You know, they retain feelings for 3D women. But you know,
I like probably the issue is like, just not to cut you off, but I think
like there are fundamentalists that do lose interest entirely. But as he mentioned before, that's only like roughly 10%, right?
That's the extreme. That's the extreme minority. The thing is that, like, I think the issue is that a lot of these people don't really have a chance, or like
they don't have a chance or a choice.
Yeah, they either don't really have much of a chance or a choice, and I'm also probably assuming that most women aren't going to give them a shot. Let's just be perfectly honest.
Yeah, there are fundamentalists who have completely gone over to the two-dimensional world. Yeah, so he talks about that, and one of the things that I highlighted here was, you know, in truth, I am a little worried about the future of Japan because romantic relationships with fictional characters do not result in the birth of actual children. Which is again,
he's not wrong.
He's fucking on point. he's a little bit on point. Yeah, now, where will the next generation of workers come from, right? So he is kind of like being a little bit critical, but also kind of stating kind of like this fact, right? If this level of fundamentalism rises, right, and people do start basically rejecting all forms of three-dimensional relationships,
I mean, they start rejecting reality, it's gonna be bad.
It's gonna start leading to problems. Yeah.
I mean, we're already seeing like the I mean, if this dude was the canary in the coal mine, we're already seeing the cracks now. Like the gas leak has started.
So he's obviously then asked, what can we do about the problem, right? What can be done to address the issue, right? And he says, he was communicating with one of these fundamentalist otaku, right, who's gone over to the two-dimensional, and he asked him to come back, right? And he told me that he would if I could prepare a human woman that was more attractive than the character he was dating, in place of her in front of him. And that's an impossible request. How can I prepare a woman or place her anywhere in anime woman fall from the sky in lives? In Japan, we have to go out and approach them, right? And then this is the key. I really want people to kind of get this point, right? This is really important. It's not that these men lack the ability to approach women. It's that they simply don't want, right? So it's not just a matter of, okay, as you mentioned, a bunch of these men don't have a choice, or they don't feel like they have a choice, and they don't, there's all that. But there's also the other side of the coin where they just don't want to. There's no point to, right? If this is a lack of ability, then men could just, train to interact with the three-dimensional world. But fundamentalists have no desire to interact with the three-dimensional world in the first place, right? So obviously that kind of leads to the problem, right? It's how you gotta
yeah, it leads down to the breakdown of society.
You can't. It's kind of a you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink type of, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to get these guys to kind of But then again, like, why should they, right? Why should they be forced to? Right, that's the other fact. Right?
Well, what are they going to get out of it? Like heartbreak and stuff like that? Like
yeah. So there's some interesting questions there. There's some interesting questions there to kind of mull over. And he says you paint a bleak picture, but you also defend otaku in media. And so he goes on to say, the image of Moe and otaku is still pretty negative. So again, this is back in years ago, right? So it's kind of, back then it was still there was still a bit iffy. Now it's a little bit better, but and then the two highlighted points here were, most of the negativity towards otaku springs from misunderstandings. Why waste 10 minutes in the shower when I can use that time to play a big shoujo game?
Not wrong.
Relatable. Relatable.
Yeah, Nretsew's
main. But that's kind of. Yeah, but that's kind of the thing, right? It's like there's fundamental. I think there are fundamental misunderstandings between like the quote unquote normies, right? The otaku, right?
I mean, let's talk about some of the people that you deal with on Pause on Point, like all anime
yeah.
blah blah blah.
These people that just don't, they don't understand what they're fucking talking about because they don't actually.
Or apparently Japan like banned pornography and sex and all this shit, even though like there's like clear books.
That one triggered you real good.
No, listen, I saw that fucking video. I'm like, what? No, that's incorrect.
Yeah, that was a good one. So
he also skipped like 400 years of history
he's saying that most of it springs from misunderstandings, but he also does say, right, like some of the responsibility lies with the otaku, which is why he's saying, So he's talking about the otaku that are like, why should I waste 10 minutes to fucking go have a shower when I could be playing fucking hentai games or whatever, right? Like there is some responsibility, like personal responsibility is important. Let's just say that. And so to cap off this chapter, right? He kind of talks about what do you think the future holds, right? And again, it's very much the same kind of stuff as we've talked about it. He's hopeful that things will change, people will begin to understand otaku. Maybe otaku might be able to get married, right? We'll see how it goes, right? See what happens with that.
Well, from someone who's 10 years in the future, I'm just gonna say, the world is bleak, and I don't give a shit anymore.
It didn't get better. So we'll
no, it didn't.
But it's still interesting though. It's still interesting. So quick pause for your recording purposes because I'm gonna go grab another drink and
I'll go drink as well.
Yeah, I figured for your editing purposes, I'll do a quick, I'll do a thing so that's a
cool. Yeah, I can hear that I'm cracking a cold one, so I'm gonna keep that in the edit
though. All right, so unpause. So next up.
Okay, let me do this. Okay, Higashi Mimura Hikaru,
and he is a fan of illustrated novels aimed at young readers known as light novels. Hey, Bio, it's your expertise.
Yeah, my wheelhouse. Let's go.
Yeah, and has spent much of his adult life studying Moe. He's published numerous fanzines on the subject, and one of the founding members of the Moe Studies Research Search. Is the best that's like the name of like an actual fucking anime. like it's almost like your Steins Gate type thing of like the future gadget.
Yeah, I wonder
right?
if like Okabe was based on this dude.
Yeah, it'd be fucking funny.
Yeah, like yeah,
at his
everyone.
former
He
university.
even has a peculiar buck in his team as well.
So he's moved to Tokyo to live and work in Akihabara. The district has become the spiritual center. Yep. And so yeah, so he got so he's a man who's done some research. I think he's based on the picture. He's up potential for udon. Okay. Yeah. I can agree, I guess. So this is going to be talking kind of about
Okabe. Like, is this
maybe?
real?
Well, he's going to talk mostly about taking otaku to school, right, and the educational side of things. He talks a lot about when did you first hear about the word moe, and then he kind of gets into it. Was moe something that people used to talk about at the time? Yep, they did. The 1990s. Yeah, so it's kind of the stuff we've already sort of covered.
Yeah, like I think it's just talking about like most of the stuff. I think we can just kind of skip this chapter. I mean, it's
yeah. A lot of this is stuff that we've kind of already sort of talked about. I'm kind of just flipping through. Okay, I did have a highlight here when he was asked, would you say that this response is distinct from being impressed by a building or a factory? Yeah, because he was talking about like anthropomorphizing things, like he's talking about like turning a bus into an anime girl, right? And there's an example of a tram or a bus being turned into a cute little moe character, right? And then how that kind of works. And I highlighted a quote here that was, moe does not mean being moved by the physical presence of a train, but rather being moved by the imaginary character of the train.
yeah.
So to give some more context to this, because we are kind of glossing over it a bit, they're kind of talking about the difference between like a train otaku and an otaku that's into the character of the train.
Yeah, the
right?
vehicle girl.
So
shit.
because you might have a train otaku who like sees the physical presence of the train and gets excited because of the physical presence, whereas for the other kind of otaku, it is more about the context, right? The contextual personality of the train, the design of the train, that kind of stuff. So they're responding to the non-human object, so it's like different feelings, right?
I mean, like here's the thing, and like you can appreciate like a good-looking gun or a nice-looking sword or a nice-looking car, because it's like that one discussion I had with you, right, where we're having the discussion about like coats and jackets when it comes to character design. Like there's just something like pleasing about it, and I think that's a similar feeling when it comes to like non-amorphized like objects. Like there's something like pleasing to it to you.
Yeah. So the other parts I have highlighted here was the question, this full section. Some people think that moe is dangerous because it shows an inability to distinguish fantasy from reality. Do you agree? Now this is going to be really fucking relevant. Yeah, this is going to be really fucking relevant. I want you motherfuckers on Twitter, right, to hear my words right now.
I don't think you're going to watch this channel unless you share this around.
I don't care. No, I don't agree at all with that stereotype. On the contrary, the deeper you pursue moe, the more you understand that it is about fiction. The character is fictional, something that exists in the realm of ideas. I don't think that there is any danger from otaku, however obsessive they may be, because they understand it is the fiction of the character they find attractive. Hey, fiction does not affect reality.
Aside from like maybe the odd one in 100 case, but that's basically it. Like,
well, this is a problem because there's this whole fucking group of people that want to completely tear down the distinction between fiction and reality, right? Things that happen in fiction have to be treated the same as if they happened in reality, with the same gravitas and the same reaction. And this,
I mean, maybe if you're like 0.0.1% like schizo, yes, but
most people are not that. But like this section, right, really hammers that point home. And we have seen kind of sentiments of that throughout the book, right?
Yeah, but I think it takes
really hammers it.
Yeah, really hammers it on. Like, listen, yes, there are really like crazy people out there who will go like butt fuck wild. I mean, we can agree with that. But most people, when they see like anime thing or something like that, they're not going to go like crazy and shit like that, because most people are sane.
So the final point here is talking about what does he think about the future of moe. He talks about how otaku will never be mainstream. Moe will always be a subculture. Right,
yes,
which is quite interesting to think about it. So yeah, that was a very quick chapter. So let's move into
Soda Mitsuru. Yeah, Mitsuru.
Yep, and he was born in 1984. Sorry for him. is a fan of anime, manga, and games. Spent most of his time. So yeah, so he has a PhD in library science. Specializes in planning and organizing museum events.
Nice.
So I think we have something in common.
He's literally
the
you,
author,
except if you're Japanese.
He's literally me, but Japanese. Author of an upcoming book on Moe. Publishes most of his fanzines. He's the head of the Philo Moe Association. Okay. This interview makes important connections between Bisoujo media and shoujo manga. So in this one, he's kind of mostly talking about Bisoujo and shoujo manga, and their kind of part in the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
When did you start writing about Moe? They kind of talk about what were you into? What was what stuff got you into it?
Yeah, I don't think there's really much super interesting stuff this chapter. Like, I think it's just kind of like.
Well, there isn't a bit, but I'm kind of.
Oh, I'm just scrolling through.
Yeah. But your fanzines have always been informational, yeah, because they talk about kind of like how a lot of his work is.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong page. My bad.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, we're on 147. So fanzines about Moe. Are you serious about studying Moe? And it goes, yes. So the classic question: what does the word Moe mean to you?
Yeah, I thought this was kind of interesting.
So first, Moe is the expression of feeling for fictional characters. Second, Moe can mean the production of such expression, creation of those fictional characters by production companies. Third, there is more political use of Moe when it is used to describe the attention paid to anime outside of Japan. So you could talk about Moe as a feeling, a market, or a political stance towards the spread of Japanese media around the world. So that's an interesting one, because obviously we've heard a lot about the feeling aspect, right?
Yep.
A lot of the feeling. Our boy, our Nostradamus boy, right, was talking about the market, right,
Yep.
a little bit, and now we're kind of talking about the political side, right? Like there are these kind of there has been the cool Japan, Japanese sort of political push to be like,
it's a push to push like Japanese soft culture. I might try and get Joe from Pause to Select. If he can link me some materials about like Cool Japan, because he's more of an expert on that type of shit, we might get Joe on the line.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the Cool Japan thing, and we did talk about it once in one of our kind of had a clip where we were ranting about this guy.
But I think the layman's thing is like the Japanese politicians pushing using anime and manga to push soft power, which is in some ways stronger than hard power.
Which the issue with the soft power argument is it's one of those things that you can't really force, right? Like I don't think that the popularity of anime and manga in like, because people like to talk about Cool Japan like it's some kind of fucking conspiracy theory, right? Where it's like,
it's not a conspiracy
the Japanese.
Listen, it's not a conspiracy theory if they're advertising it. They're fucking doing it. Like, they literally say it.
Yeah, but it's like, because by the way that people talk about it is they talk about it like it's, the Japanese government is making all these is making all these animes and trying to use it to control the minds of the West or whatever. And it's some crazy bullshit when it's like, no, it's just a tourism program, guys. Calm down. It's not fucking. They're not like buying fucking or like the Japanese government is not fucking forcing these animators in sweatshops to make these animes so that they can fucking push soft power. It's like, no, the artists are making cool stuff. The government obviously looks at that and goes, hey, how can we capitalize on this for our own benefit, right?
Yeah, can we we have a fucking mangaka, former mangaka, and as a standing politician.
Yeah, right now, yeah. So it's like, how can
I think his name is Kane. I think it's like Kane, like the Negama dude. Also based Giga Chan.
Yeah, it's Ken Akimatsu.
Ken Akamatsu or something. Yeah, based Giga Chan. I'm surprised they didn't get him like fucking interview in this.
Well, this was like, I wonder what he was doing at the time. Maybe he would have been an interesting fella to have.
Because
he'll be an interesting fella to talk to now. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, we might have to do a video about like this dude at some point, because
just do a video on Ken, because Ken's crazy.
Yeah, this fucking mad lad. This fucking chap.
So the cool Japan, the political aspect of it, right? I do think that there is a political aspect to it, but I think that people, especially in the West, they tend to they have these really weird views about Japan.
The Japanese.
Listen, it all goes back
to the mystical Fae theory shit, or like World War II.
Yeah.
Shit.
So, but the thing is, people don't say the same things about, because I know down here in our neck of the woods, the government has been pumping a significant amount of money into the video game industry, right? They've been promoting New Zealand game company, like there's been like a big
I mean,
push
for example,
for
like,
it.
okay, for example, like New Zealand is primarily like an agricultural superpower, right? Like we export.
Yeah, but
most
even
stuff.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
stop
but
for a second.
even
But
us,
let me
even
finish.
even. Oh no, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Well,
but I wanted to.
So let me finish. Like, even though we're an agricultural superpower, right? The reason why we're probably investing in video games and other stuff is diversify like state assets and state capital. Because
well, yeah, that, but you could argue that it's also a soft power, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like we did have, I think it was, what was the fucking
Brotown?
was that? No, not Brotown. It was that fucking video game. What was it called? The one that was Path of Exile. Was it Path of Exile? Was New Zealand made? That was really popular, and so every my point is every country is doing it, right? Every country.
Yeah, I mean, America,
there's
like
grants.
I mean, America does it, like Hollywood.
Yeah. There's grants and there's like funding you can tap into and stuff. Like if you want to start a video game business or whatever, if you want to study video games, there's like courses and all kinds of stuff. Like there's a lot of avenues, right? But no one argues about that being soft, right? No one talks about that. But when Japan does, it's like thing Japan, right? When Japan does it, all of a sudden it's some grand mind control fucking conspiracy to make you forget about
what
the
they
war
don't
crimes,
know is
right?
actually like, listen, everyone thinks like the World Economic Forum controls everything. No, it's actually New Zealand that controls everything.
Yeah, it's actually New Zealand. All right, but anyway,
listen, I'm joking.
yeah,
We'll edit some of this
I
out.
know you're joking. I know, it's all good. So moving on, do you think that there is a certain character type that is Moe? And then he kind of talks about, what I think is important about Bishoujo games is that they emphasize characters both in terms of illustrations and stories, and the players interact with these characters and develop feelings for them, right? So so big emphasis on the feelings, right?
Yeah, that's been an important fall through with this entire video.
Yeah, so so you would not agree that specific elements of a character design are more or less Moe for more? So he's kind of harking back to the Azumata
Azugamanga Daio,
or Azumaga talks about this a little later because it's like at page 170, so it's talking about something that's happening, going to be coming up later, right? And he says, I don't think that Moe is a matter of character design, which is interesting because kind of counters because there was a few people in the beginning of the book that kind of talked about how there's like a Moe aesthetic, right, with like cat ears and that kind of stuff. But this guy is talking more about how although it's easy to get the implication because of the prevalence of Bishoujo media in the late 90s, Bishoujo manga and anime and games are also on the rise. In Bishoujo games, feature numerous cute girls that the player character can interact with. You will often find visual elements are used to differentiate characters. So basically, like it's not, there's no like determinate this is Moe thing, right? It's more different people have different tastes, and those different tastes materialize
like a great example. We could all agree that when a girl looks sexy, right? But there's different types of there's different types of sexiness, right?
Yeah,
like
your ass man and your boob man.
Or if you like tomboys, like you're more into tomboys and more golf chicks, like they're still sexy, but it's like a slight variation of that.
Yeah. So I didn't highlight it, but there's also how would you respond to people who say that Moe is just about ogling cute girls? And he responds with, I think that's a misconception. There are many cute girl characters in anime and manga games, but that really isn't the point. In many popular shoujo games, for example, those produced by Key, see page 98, Moe is invoked in the emotional scene where we see the human aspects of the character. So is it just about the cute girls? No, I don't think so. That's a really improvised way to think about Moe. It is certainly not my experience watching Gundam Seed or Noir or any of the other anime series that moved me. So again, talking about feelings, big feels, big feels,
the feels.
Big feels. Gotta have big feels, right?
It's
not just about the physical attractive. Look at hot anime girls. There's some good stuff.
Pause for a second.
Okay. Yep.
I am sorry about that. My nana just walked in.
No, you're all good.
I don't. All right. Want to move on to the next guy?
Yeah. I was waiting for you to tell me what.
Okay, so next guy is fuck. This is a mouthful. Okay. Morikawa Ichiro. Yeah, Ichiro. You see, Morikawa Ka Ichiro. What the fuck is that car? What the? No, there's a fucking apostrophe.
Anyway,
what the fuck?
Yeah, it's got an apostrophe in it. We'll just call him MK. So MK
I'll
here, right?
I'm looking to look this dude up. Why does he have a fucking apostrophe in his name? That's really fucking fucking weird.
All right, but anyway,
You go on. I'm gonna
so
look this dude up quickly.
So he was born in 1971. Design theorist and professor at the School of Global Japanese Studies at Meiji University. Best known for his book, Learning from Akihabara: The Birth of something, published in 2003. So this is talking a bit more about the Akihabara district.
The electric town.
Yeah, talking about kind of it. He's done a few exhibitions, I think. Yeah. So he's talking a lot about Akihabara and the history of Akihabara is kind of what this chapter is. How Moe kind of transformed Akihabara as a district, right? Like one of the key points that I've highlighted here is the normalization of the verb Moe-ru, meaning to
Meiji
sprout.
University, that's pretty fucking big. Holy shit. So that fucking comma there isn't supposed to be his name. Like, I was just like, I think that was a misprint.
Okay. Well, that's funny.
I was just like, why the fuck is there a fucking, like, comma in his fucking
random comma there, yeah. So, meaning to sprout or to bud, right? So I highlighted that because I thought that was an interesting, because that's like the terminology of it, Moe-ru. So a lot of this chapter is just kind of, talking about how Moe and anime and manga kind of changed Akihabara. Can Moe be used to describe a response to objects or real people too? And he kind of says you would have to differentiate if he or she is intrinsically interested in the object or in what the object is representing. So again, kind of that fiction versus reality type stuff.
Yeah, and also, like, just to talk about that, I mean, for example, we associate certain characteristics of animals, like lions for bravery, snakes and foxes for cunning. I mean, it also ties a little bit into that as well. Like, we ascribe values to things.
So they kind of talk. They even did it in
World War One or Two.
There's a great shot of the satellite in the building from Stargate. That's great.
I think that's actually real.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's real.
I think it's still there actually.
I don't know.
Love the
check.
It'd be
cool if it was. Just talking about how. So this whole chapter is pretty easy to kind of skip through because it's mostly
it's just kind of reinforcing most of what we covered. All
right, it's reinforcing a lot of what we already talked about, and it's a lot of history about Akihabara. So if you're interested in like the history of the location itself, Akihabara itself.
Akihabara is a very interesting place. It's one of those places in Japan I do want to go to at some point because it's like fucking nerd like Mecca or something.
Yeah. So moving on to someone that has a much easier name.
Yeah, Ito Go. Thank you.
Ito Go. Yes. So he's a manga critic and professor at Tokyo
University.
Tokyo's university, best known for his book. So this is going to be talking a lot about like the history of the greats.
Yeah, like the old school. This is like the OGs.
The old school. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the pleasure of lines, writing the new way, right? So this is going to be talking about kind of manga and anime, sort of in the 70s.
This is going to be talking about kind of like the stuff I talked about, like Astro Boy and stuff like that. Like this is like we're talking about like the grandfathers of like the anime shit. Like this is like.
But of course, before we get into that, he has to be asked the question, what is your definition of Moe? And his answer to the question is, to me, it is a psychological effect that is triggered by a character image. Sometimes it triggers a physical reaction. I find it somewhat dubious to simply define Moe as desire.
Well, here's the thing: you can find it good, like you can find someone cute and not like find her sexually attractive or like desire her. I mean, for example, you'd find like a child cute, but you wouldn't like want to,
Yeah. So he's talking about, there's a lot more to this in the quote, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it kind of caps off as to me, Moe is the pleasure of reception image of cute girl. Yeah. So it's interesting how he's kind of contradicting some of the other stuff that we've read, where he's saying that without story or meaning, right? Looking at the cute anime girls as just the cute anime girls without the context, even though there are other people that say the context matters a lot. Yeah. So it kind of shows that again, this book is a mix of perspective, right? You've got different ways.
Yeah, which I think, I think was very good for the book because if they all like fucking agree, it's gonna be really fucking boring.
Yeah. So moving on. So what does the pleasure of lines mean? And he kind of says, with Moe, slight movements of the body are expressed and the body parts are emphasized. With further lines, one line enables the viewer to imagine a three-dimensional body, which is that's quite true. Art is a lot of figuring out how to fucking draw is okay. Where do I put these lines in such a way that makes it look good? And kind of talk, and then he talks about Tezuka's characters and whatnot. They have a highlight here, which is, Mayo otaku like cute things. Many moe artists say they want to be a cute girl. Otaku are the weak boys, but their weakness is also flexibility. So that's an interesting way to put it. But yeah, a lot of so this kind of goes into a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff that we've kind of already covered.
Yeah.
So
we're almost in the home stretch. We've got like 20 pages.
We're almost in the home stretch. We're almost there.
Okay.
I think we've got like maybe one or two more. But there's one point here that I did have highlighted, which was at the very end of this fella's interview. Was to understand moe, we ought to be paying less attention to specific works and more attention to the relationships that fans have with these characters, which I think
going into the parasocial relationship shit. I mean, going back to the VTuber stuff.
Right. So moving on.
Slightly easier. Okay, I'll handle names. Let's see. Azuma Hiroki. Yeah, Hiroki.
Born in 1971, cultural critic and writer. Public attention 2000 for his book, The Over Visualized World. Essay he wrote for pop manga. So yeah. So I think he's going to be a bit more talking about a bit more about. I'm trying to remember what this one was about actually, because it was kind of semi-critical moe and stuff. But
yeah,
also
like all I see is like post modern, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, we get Joe's favorite book, The Database Animals, gets a mention.
Oh yeah, I think, have I read that? I've got to get around to reading that actually, but yeah.
Yeah, The Database Animals gets mentioned.
Shout out to Joe.
So what does moe mean to this guy? And his answer to it was, moe referred to a sort of presence, a sort of perverse way of experiencing feelings of love, loving a fictional character as low as it was a real person. But then the word spread to the mainstream and it lost all of its meaning, right?
I don't entirely.
How does moe? Yeah, then he kind of talks about how does moe relate to the consumption of otaku media? So he's talking about a lot of stuff, books. How do fanzines fit into your argument? Okay, and then so there was a point here which was do you think moe has gone global since the early 2000s? People in the government have run out of things to do and have taken to promoting manga and anime under the banner of Japan. I think that manga and anime will become part of the global popular culture. The people behind the Cool Japan program are a bunch of megalomaniacs with delusions of grandeur. Japan manga and anime may be popular overseas, but there is a difference in taste. In Japan, otaku are into anime production houses such as Kyoto Animation and Shaft. Yep. Overseas, people want to see animation released by Studio Ghibli and Production IG. Japan otaku are into anime directors such as Yamamoto Yukida and Shimbo, blah 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 blah.
Put it in the text chat. I'll try and read it.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. But overseas, people like Miyazaki and Oshii, right? And I think that it's true to say that the United States, for example, really only accepts a slightly watered down version of moe. But having audiences with different tastes might encourage creators in Japan to go in new directions, which would be healthy for the anime industry as a whole. So there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, there's a lot to
fucking unpack.
There's a lot to unpack.
I think that he is somewhat right
and somewhat wrong.
Yeah, he's somewhat right, but he's somewhat wrong, because obviously I think that despite the idea of the West only really accepting a watered down version of moe, quote unquote, right? Yeah. I think that has kind of changed over time, but at the same time, it's also worsened, right? Yes. There's a very interesting contradiction going on here, because I see a lot of.
Well, just before you just add to your point, here's the thing, like one of the reasons why I liked anime, right, is because it was fine with talking about like rather risque or taboo topics. So in a way he's right, but I think in a way he's wrong, because I think like what makes anime is partially is that like it talks about topics that people that things the West would never dare talk about. Like
I think that this is kind of one of those product of its time statements, because obviously
hindsight is 2020. I mean,
if we're talking about like 2012, I would say he's probably a little bit more right, because let's be real, most people that are normies, quote unquote, would probably only really know of anime via
Toonami,
Miyazaki and Konami and that kind of stuff,
or
right?
Toonami.
Four Kids dubs, right? Yeah. Or Crunchyroll, I think was kind of starting up around 2012.
Yes.
So I think that he's kind of right, and I think some of what he says does apply today when you look at, especially people on Twitter who are constantly fucking screaming about fan service and, oh no, there's incest in the anime, or there's problematic stuff in the anime, or
yes, I've seen those tweets. It's half the reason why I love Twitter.
No, it's so fucking bad, right? I think a lot of that is to do with these people that can only really interact with anime, manga, and moe via this watered down version.
I mean,
right?
yeah, I mean that's why. I mean that's partially what I mean of like he's right but also wrong, because there are people like that.
He's wrong in the sense that there's also a lot more people that appreciate moe and anime and manga.
Yeah, like there are people who appreciate anime
for what it is, right?
Yeah.
For what it is,
what
right?
it is.
Yeah, not the watered down version, for what it actually is, and they don't want that to be watered down by those crybullies, right? They want anime and manga to be actually respected for what it is, not be watered down.
What it is, not what it isn't.
Yeah. So it's an interesting perspective. Something to think about, definitely. Why do you? Yeah. So then he kind of that chapter's that was the only real part from that. So let's jump straight into our next fella.
Yeah, Saito. Okay, so Saito Tamaki.
Yeah. So I believe he is a psychologist, right? So we're going to be talking about psychology in this section. So unique orientations of desire. So otaku sexuality, right? So this is going to be very interesting.
Spicy chapter.
And then so to skip over, how did you first become interested in otaku? To ask the poignant question that has to be asked to everyone: what is your definition of moe? And the psychologist man, ST, says moe is quasi love felt for a fictional character. There are those who attempt to analyze it further, but I think that the basic points are that there is something felt for fictional characters, and that it is something that they love. Right. Yeah. So pretty simple, to the point, pretty on point. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So then he kind of talks about what do you mean when you talk about otaku sexuality, so talking about being attracted to fictional characters. I have a highlighted point here, which is the desire for three-dimensional and the two-dimensional are separate. And separate. And this is a psychologist saying this too, so fucking
but Nretsew, he's a Japanese psychologist, like he probably doesn't matter.
Thing Japan,
he's one of those fey elves, bro. Like, don't believe him. It's too whimsical.
In your book, you say that desire can be asymmetric, right? So can you explain? Desire does not have to be symmetrical. You can feel desire for something in the two-dimensional world that you don't desire in the three-dimensional world. Preach, brother. Preach.
Can we get higher?
Yeah, because he's 100% correct. This is one of the key things that gets brought up on Twitter, gets argued by people, right? And they talk about, oh no, if you're into so and so rape or whatever fucking thing you're into, shit. That means you want to do it in real life too. You're attracted to it in real life. It's like no. No. There's this one, it's separate, and two, it's asymmetric.
Well, also here's the thing, like just like going to like the fetish thing, right? Like, listen, some things are hot in idea, but not exactly in reality. There's also that aspect to it as well.
The woman. So he kind of keeps going into this a little bit, and then he talks about how the women who read boys love manga don't necessarily have gay friends or an interest in homosexual men. Right.
Yeah.
Very on point. So then he goes, can you explain why a desire for fictional characters is so pronounced in Japan, which kind of talks about some stuff talked about. When mainstream anime creators intentionally producing characters that fans would fall in love with in the 70s, right? And he kind of talks about how, according to Osaka Ichi, Tomino tried to invoke the issue of Palestine in the original TV anime Mobile Suit Gundam, but anime fans did not consider these larger political issues and instead loved the characters. I love that. I mean, that's fucking hilarious.
I mean, considering what's going on, like, today, right isn't right now.
It's kind of like, especially with, like, how politicized media is, right? It's almost kind of weird how it's like, he made Gundam to try and, like, talk about, like, trying to invoke the issue of, Palestine and, freedom and liberation. I mean, because, obviously, Gundam boys, right? We know our Gundams. So it's kind of interesting how, fuck all that, cute girl.
Yes.
It's quite funny, quite funny. So moving on from that, it talks about kind of Miyazaki as well. You know, do you think Miyazaki is in a similar situation? And I loved this little bit that I highlighted here, which was, to be blunt, Miyazaki's love of his fictional characters is reflected in his repeated use of a young heroine in all of his work. because as you know with Miyazaki, right, he doesn't hate the otaku, right? Those quotes are obviously fucking memes and they're fake.
It's out of context. It's out of context.
It's out of context, right? But he does have like a distaste for the way that anime has kind of gone, right?
I mean, I don't exactly blame him. I mean, as someone who
I don't exactly blame him, but he does have that thing. But it's ironic, right? It's ironic when you look at his work and you it's like he's fucking hiding, right? He's hiding his power.
Miyazaki goes Super Saiyan, like his hair.
Yeah, because they kind of he kind of talks about it here. It's like, but Miyazaki does not like the otaku that love his characters or write fanzines about them, even though he himself fell in love with a character that inspired him. Right?
Yeah, he's in a way, it's kind of like an irony, bro.
Yeah, it's a bit of an irony, bro thing. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So this kind of goes on. That leads into the topic of fighting girls. Yeah, so this guy wrote a book called Fighting Girls.
I haven't read it, so
which sounds like an interesting read. I might have to look into that.
Yeah, I like well, after the moment we can cover some of those other like academic anime books I have because
I'd have to. I think I don't know. You might have actually. That might have been one that was a thing.
It might have been. I don't think I've read it yet, but I have like a bunch of these academic books. Some of them Joe sent me, some of them I found myself. But I have read like a few of them.
I'll have to look in my my folders and see if I've got it. So the cat. One of the points here was otaku value things that are impossible in reality or exist only in fiction, and the fighting girl is the ultimate example of that. So yeah, quite interesting. And now we're in the. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. We've done it. We have read a book and we have discussed.
We have read a book because now it's just the glossary.
That's summary of terms. So anyway, I would just like to say I think the Moe Manifesto is a very interesting read, and it definitely, like, even if I disagree with some of the perspectives, as we've mentioned, I think it gives you like some valuable insights, even though it's a bit dated. Although hindsight being 2020, I think it gives you a lot of valuable insights into the medium and stuff, even if you disagree with it. And I think like more people should read this book. It's not even that long. It's like under 200 pages. Like, please.
Yeah, it's under 200 pages.
Love of God, please fucking read. Please.
I read like a chapter or two a day for like. It took me like a few weeks to get through it because I'm busy. So
yeah. Well, anyway, but just not sorry to cut. Well, we'll do yours in a second. I give this book a high recommendation. If we're like to review it, right, I'd give it like maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10. Like this is mandated reading.
I agree.
Mandatory reading.
Yeah, I agree pretty much with everything you said. I think it's definitely mandatory reading for anyone that's interested in anime and manga because maybe not necessarily for like if you're looking for like a Bible text to live by or whatever. That's not what this is. What it is it's a series of perspectives from a different time period, right? At this point, right? That can give you some interesting insights. Personally, for me, I found a lot of the insights, particularly around sexuality and gender, to be quite fascinating.
Yeah, considering that it tied into our... Since, in a way, it kind of ties into the previous video we made, is all itchy, is it all just porn, bro? Like, it kind of ties into that.
Yeah, we talked about that kind of, like, otaku sexuality a little bit in that, right? And I think that the certain concepts, such as, viewing it as a third gender, such as, viewing it as transcending gender, right? Outside of the boundaries of traditional roles, right? A lot of that, even if you disagree with it, it's definitely an interesting concept to kind of chew into and mull over. I think it's a discussion worth having. The issue is that I'm not really well versed in that like subject matter, so I didn't really want to go into it. But like, I still think even if I somewhat disagree with it currently right now, I still think it's an interesting like thing to ponder and discuss and think about. Like, this book does give you things to think about as well. Yeah, and that's what it's about, right? It's not necessarily about changing your mind or getting you to view things differently or whatever. It's more about kind of thinking about.
For us, most of this book was like just preaching to the choir.
Yeah, for us it's preaching to the choir, but it's good for getting a kind of backbone, right, for your own stances, right? To kind of be like, right, here is, the perspectives of the time. Here are some interesting arguments about it. Here is a lot of history about it, a lot of information about it, right? What it means, what it can mean, right? And how you can kind of interact with it. So I think that it's definitely helped me kind of solidify a lot of my stances about Moe and how I view anime and manga and the like. So I would agree with you that's recommended reading. I think anyone that is even remotely interested in anime and manga outside of surface level reading should definitely look at picking up the book and giving it a go. Because obviously we've skipped over quite a lot of stuff, even though we have read a lot of it as well, but we kind of skipped over.
Well, we're
quite
only
a lot
like
just
two
because
dudes, and originally we're supposed to have like full here, but
we were going to have Phil here, and we were going to do more back and forth type stuff, but this kind of turned into more of sort of a summary of points that I found interesting.
We had a bit of discussion. Like, listen, if Fool was here, I mean, if only Fool was here. Like, listen, that's gonna be the thumbnail for this video. It's gonna be a picture of like Legend Galactic Heroes, except it's me. It's like if only Fool was here.
Yeah, but anyway, I think that kind of
So if you guys enjoy these videos, me and Nretsew might be covering more anime books or just discussing more topics.
We'll be doing
more people. Hopefully with more people.
We'll be doing some more collab stuff, and of course I'm always doing the stuff on Critical Critique as well. So come and watch me and Ellie try and kill each other every week.
I'll only watch once you finish them off. So.
So anyway, I will catch you guys next time.
All right, bye for now.